Chapter 101. My tarot cards tell me that I just need to wait for the right time. A sudden voice attracted Adam's attention. He turned around and saw an acquaintance. Amen. Adam, long time no see. The other party smiled and greeted Adam. Amen is a Ravenclaw, full name Amen Fix, usually likes to wear a pair of monocles. This name and appearance scared Adam when he first met him in astronomy class. But on second thought, if it was Amen's worldview, his brain should have been cooked long ago with the information he knew, and Adam was relieved. Although it was a false alarm, due to this coincidence, Adam's relationship with this Amen was also above the average friendship line of classmates. You are tinkering with divination again. What do you mean by tinkering? I am a serious prophet. Amen said, and took out a deck of tarot cards like a magician. In a blink of an eye, he turned the tarot cards between his hands to make a few patterns, and finally spread them out in his hands. Want to draw one? It looks professional and unprofessional. There is a kind of beauty of professionalism in the wrong direction. Adam shrugged his shoulders and drew a card at random. The right position of Queen. Amen took a look. What about the interpretation? You didn't say what you wanted to divination before you drew it. Amen shook his head and took back the Queen. Are you playing tarot cards? Take me one. Cologne saw the situation here and came over. Come and draw one. Tell me what you want to divination first. Adam reminded. Well, then let's predict whether I can be successfully selected as the batsman. Cologne said and was about to draw a card. Wait, I haven't shuffled the cards yet. The tarot cards in Amen's hand were shuffled in a flash. Okay, let's draw. It's the upright chariot. Amen saw the result and said with emotion. Congratulations in advance, everything goes well. Cologne was obviously in a good mood after getting the good result, and turned to share with Eugene and others. Adam looked at his back and shook his head. Your skill is very good for encouraging people. What do you mean? You look down on my divination ability. Hey? Do you mean that I can't even accurately predict tomorrow's weather? Amen was silent for a few seconds after hearing this, and then there was a string of difficult to understand words, such as predicting the weather is a small matter and a prophet should predict a person's fate. The top floor of the North Tower was filled with a happy atmosphere. After laughing for a while, Adam looked at Amen. But I can draw the Queen 7 or 8 times out of 10. Your psychological grasp and magic skills are pretty good. Shouldn't normal people think that my divination is very accurate? Well, if I hadn't found out that you cast a spell on that Slytherin student last time, which made his prophecy of his way forward being blocked come true, I would have believed it. Just ask if you are accurate or not. It is indeed accurate. Amen raised his head proudly, and then looked at Adam in confusion. Don't you think my divination about Cologne is very accurate? Adam raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? He is your roommate, and you have such a good relationship. I asked him, and he performed well in the test, at least not that bad. I believe those Hufflepuffs will be willing to give you this face. Then you may think too much about Hufflepuffs. No, you think too much about me. I don't mean that they will help Colin to get a backdoor for you. Amen stretched out his finger and shook it. It's that none of them are particularly outstanding or backward, and it's ambiguous to choose anyone. Knowing that Colin is your roommate and good friend, you will naturally lean towards Colin. Okay, this divination is considered to be the essence of your learning. That's... Amen smiled complacently and looked up, and Adam looked over. After a few seconds, the trapdoor on the ceiling was opened, and a silver ladder was lowered from the trapdoor, just hanging down to the feet of the classmate next to the ladder. As he followed the crowd, Adam looked at Amen. How did you know when Professor Trelawney put the ladder? We are not the first batch of Professor Trelawney's students. She always puts the ladder at that time. Amen winked at Adam and then climbed up the ladder first. Although Adam chatted with Amen downstairs for a while, he returned to his roommate's team during class. The space in the divination classroom is very cramped, and the curtains were drawn tightly, incense was burning somewhere, and there was a fireplace with a fire burning near the trapdoor. Overall, the classroom was very stuffy. Adam and his friends found a small round table surrounded by cushions near the wall. It was a little cooler here, and the 5 of them just sat around the round table, but... This table, has it never been wiped? Bernard stretched out his fingers and rubbed them on the tablecloth. It felt greasy. What is this? It should be wax. Adam looked at the half-burned candles on the table. There was no candlestick underneath, and the melted wax condensed into a lump where the bottom of the candle touched the tablecloth. I suspect this place is not cleaned at all. Uther looked around and saw tea sets of various patterns placed on the table, steps, floor, and shelves. He even saw tea leaves that were not cleaned in several teapots with lids open, and the crystal balls everywhere seemed to have a layer of dust on top. This cushion looks quite comfortable. Cologne touched the bulging cushion and sat down, but was pushed to the side by the elastic force that followed. Fortunately, Eugene quickly supported his shoulders. Although it was in the corner, it was only a little cooler than the front row. It was like a heater in a greenhouse. Coupled with the strong incense that made people feel a little uncomfortable, and the hazy and dim red light because of the red cloth around the lamp, it made people feel even more stuffy. At this time, I really wanted to eat a bowl of sweet ice cream. Professor Trelawney came out of the shadows and gave her opening remarks. Adam whispered to his roommates. Would you like a bowl of 4-fruit soup? This isn't good? After all, we're still in class. Cologne said hesitantly, and after Adam conjured up the 4-fruit soup, he decisively reached out and took a bowl. After taking a sip, the cold taste and sweet flavor immediately made him forget Professor Trelawney in front of him. Don't worry, Professor Trelawney can't see this side, and we can't even see her here. Ahem, give me 2 bowls too. Adam suddenly felt someone poking him from behind, and when he turned around, he saw Aman squatting behind him. Where did you come from? Aman pointed out that there were 2 armchairs and a small table full of miscellaneous items in front of a shelf. One of the armchairs was empty, and the person in the other armchair saw Adam looking over and waved to Adam. Thank goodness you can bear it. Hey, it's just a clean-up. Aman waved his hand, took out a handful of silver sickles from his pocket, and put them one by one on the table in front of Adam. 2 bowls of 4-fruit soup, with plenty of ice. Chapter 102. When did you get so close to the people of Ravenclaw? Bernard was a little confused when he saw Aman, who was crouching back to his seat with 2 bowls of 4-fruit soup. Uther recalled. Adam seems to be very interested in this kind of strange Ravenclaw. The Ravenclaw girl last year also had a good relationship with him. Are you talking about Luna? Do I have a good relationship with them, just a little better than ordinary classmates? Adam thought for a while. Rather than being strange, it's better to say that they have strong inspiration, which attracts me. The inspiration here is not the inspiration of creation, but the ability to perceive the spiritual dimension, whether it is Luna or Aman. However, based on Adam's current contact, Aman can balance the boundaries between reality and spirituality better than Luna, so although it is also a little strange, at least he doesn't look as eccentric as Luna. Cologne was stunned. Inspiration. So he really knows divination. He used to treat the upright chariot as a joke and blessing. I can't guarantee that he won't, but at least he used magic skills when he told fortunes to me before. People who can tell fortunes must have strong inspiration, but people with strong inspiration may not necessarily tell fortunes. They didn't talk too long about Adam's friendship with Ravenclaw. After a mysterious opening speech, Professor Trelawney began her teaching. The few people who didn't think they could learn it listened and ate 4-fruit soup, and the class was considered comfortable. At lunch, the entire third-year Hufflepuff class began to get excited. In the afternoon, their senior Newt will teach them. Adam, do you know what senior Newt will teach us in the afternoon? As an assistant teacher, Adam was naturally targeted by his classmates early on, especially Cologne and Eugene, who were waiting for Adam to come back from Newt's office to reveal part of it to them in advance. If you can make adequate preparations before class, you will definitely leave a good impression on senior Newt. Oh no, Professor Scamander. Adam, who had indeed learned about the content of the afternoon class in advance, pondered for a while and said. After all, it's the first class, so don't have too high expectations. Hey! Cologne and Eugene looked at each other, wondering why Adam said that. Could it be that the class that Professor Scamander was going to give them was just reading from the textbook and was actually very boring? Impossible, Senior Newt is not that kind of person. Adam did not explain much about the two people's doubts, and they would know the specific situation in the afternoon. Although Adam's words at noon were a bit subtle, Cologne and Eugene couldn't help but fall into a state of excitement when they really saw Professor Scamander outside the Forbidden Forest. Hello everyone, I am your new professor this year. Let's start the class. The very dry opening remarks did not dampen everyone's enthusiasm at all. Newt breathed a sigh of relief and made the same movements as in the previous classes, and when preparing for the class he took out a cage covered with cloth, and then removed the black cloth on the cage. "This is a cub of a manticore," Professor Scamander said as he reached out his hand to tease the little guy in the cage. When the other party raised his pliers, he quickly pulled his hand back and smiled at everyone. "Very cute, right?" Seeing the bright red little guy in the cage, the students nodded in unison, and only a few young wizards who knew the situation of manticores well looked strange. Manticores, whose full name is manticores, are classified as beasts by the Ministry of Magic. The danger level given by the Department for the Control of Magical Creatures is XXXXX, the same level as dragons, acromantula, and basilisks. Their cubs are indeed about the size of an adult's palm, but they are carnivorous and often appear in groups. Manticores will live alone after adulthood. Their body size of more than 100 meters, a large number of flexible limbs, and several tails that can spray fireballs and are as long as their bodies make them completely without natural enemies in the natural environment. Even a giant dragon would not include such a powerful creature that is not much less dangerous than itself in its diet. Putting down the cage, Professor Scamander began to tell everyone about the information of the scorpion tail beast, and he spoke in great detail, even attaching his own experience. "I once saw an adult scorpion tail beast in Germany. My family and I almost died at that time. Thanks to some special means, we escaped." He took a piece of raw meat from Adam and put it outside the cage. The little scorpion tail beast stretched out its pincers at a very fast speed to clamp the meat in, and then quickly used its mouth parts to take the meat. Tear the piece of meat into strips and eat it all. As you can see, even as a cub, the scorpion-tailed beast is still quite aggressive and lethal, and such magical animals are not uncommon in nature. Speaking of this, Professor Scamander looked at everyone solemnly and said, "So, when you encounter dangerous magical animals in the wild, how to protect yourself becomes a very important topic. I believe that students who will choose this course have love for these spirits of nature in their hearts. Perhaps you think that the magical animal protection class should learn how to take care of magical animals, but as a magical animal expert." Such a self-proclaimed title made Professor Scamander blush, but he continued, "I must warn everyone that the premise of wanting to protect magical animals must be that you have the ability to protect yourself at the same time. At the same time, blind love without any professional knowledge foundation cannot protect magical animals, but may cause them to suffer greater harm. This is all my experience. So, Professor Scamander, are we going to have a spell class this class?" The speaker was a Ravenclaw. Adam remembered that his name was Michael Corner. Such an impolite speech naturally attracted a round of unkind gazes, but Professor Scamander shook his head indifferently. "Oh. Of course not, that's Professor Flitwick's job, isn't it? What I want to teach you is how to use the knowledge of magical animals to make magical animals give up their hostility towards you and let them feel your kindness." Professor Scamander stretched out his hand, and Adam very cooperatively handed over his textbook. Professor Scamander held the book Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them and said, "I believe you all have read my humble work more or less." The little wizards below couldn't help laughing. Although this scene has been seen more than once, Professor Scamander still couldn't help but fall into confusion. What's the funny point of his words? Adam stretched out his hand and pressed the corner of his mouth. Originally, this sentence didn't have much of a funny point, but their defense against the dark arts professor last year also liked to say this, and I don't know how he gets along with the Dementors now. Unlike Lockhart, Newt is really talented. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, published by the Ministry of Magic, is almost the most authoritative popular science book on magical animals in the magic world in the world. It details the habits, habitats, how to care for and other information of 75 kinds of magical animals. Since the first edition of this book, the textbook for the Care of Magical Animals class at Hogwarts has not changed the latest edition of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I will teach you how to approach these lovely magical animals safely from the perspective of habits based on the content of this book. Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up, and then saw Professor Scamander raised his hands. "Come on, everyone, imagine yourself as a manticore." Chapter 103. Yes, that's right, twist it. Professor Scamander, I don't mean to question you, but... After twisting their buttocks for a few minutes with their hands raised, a student finally couldn't help it. Will dancing like this really make the manticore think that we are the same kind as them and let down their guard against us? Obviously, this is another Ravenclaw, but this time, perhaps because of the wording, or because other students have similar ideas, he did not attract everyone's hostility. Of course, look at me. Professor Scamander took out the cage that had just been covered with cloth, lifted the cloth, and the manticore inside waved its pincers uncomfortably after seeing the sun again. Professor Scamander put down the cage, raised his hands, and posed the posture he had just taught the students. Then the students saw that the manticore also raised its pincers, and as Professor Scamander danced, the manticore also swayed left and right. It actually works. The Ravenclaw was speechless. Well, he shouldn't doubt Professor Scamander, but why doesn't Adam need to learn this dance? Good question. Professor Scamander clapped his hands to attract everyone's attention, and then waved to Adam. Come here, Adam. Adam walked to the front of the cage and stretched out his hand to the manticore in the cage. Just when everyone couldn't help but exclaimed, the manticore not only did not attack, but took a few steps back, then hesitated, walked forward again, stretched out its pincers and put them on Adam's index finger. Did you see it? I have to say that there are people in this world who can have talents beyond ordinary people's imagination, such as being more popular with magical animals than others. Professor Scamander sighed, and he couldn't help but envy when he said this. I think it's more likely that it saw the souls of its fellow creatures being fried and cooked around Adam, and didn't dare to attack Adam. Although he didn't know why Adam was so popular with magical animals, Cologne couldn't help but complain in a low voice, and then couldn't help swallowing his saliva. How to say it? As an arthropod, the meat of the scorpion-tailed beast is tighter and has a lower fat content than the acromanthus. It is not as mellow as the acromanthus, but it is better in taste. The most important thing is that the adult scorpion-tailed beast is much larger than the acromanthus, and has more legs than the acromanthus, and has pincers. After seeing with their own eyes that Adam didn't need to learn this knowledge, the little wizards could only suppress their complex emotions, raise their hands and twist their hips to practice dancing. Fortunately, everyone around them danced together, which alleviated some of the embarrassment. The manticore dance was not too difficult. The main thing was to grasp the angle and frequency of the hip swing. After Professor Scamander taught for a while, there was no need to watch it anymore. Adam took this opportunity to approach and ask. Professor Scamander, how is your research on the creature I showed you before? Adam was talking about the jackal head brought back from Egypt. Adam was really curious about what it was. If he didn't have a little conscience in his heart, Adam would have directly used the double card to copy a dissection to see. Good question. Thinking back to that strange creature, Newt couldn't help but frowned. From the appearance, it, or he, obviously has a lot of similarities with humans. Oh, thank you. Take the brown sugar milk handed over by Adam. Professor Scamander scooped a spoonful into his mouth with a wooden spoon, and the hot milk mixed with brown sugar and pearls made people feel happy. Being able to use Egyptian fluently shows that he has the same intelligence as humans, so after preliminary analysis, I think he is a bit like a werewolf-like creature unique to Egypt. Werewolf-like creature? Adam frowned. So if you are bitten by it, you will also become a dog head, a jackal head. There are many schools of thought about the birth of werewolves. The werewolves in this world are humans infected with a magical disease called lycanthropy. If bitten, they will be infected. The magic of the full moon will make the werewolves go crazy. The information about the werewolf emerged in his mind, and Adam questioned again. But it has never gone crazy during the full moon, and according to him, it has existed for thousands of years. No, he is not contagious. Professor Scamander raised the spoon to emphasize, then lowered his head and took a sip. The reason why I describe him as a werewolf is that he is not naturally formed like a werewolf. He may be infected by some magical disease, or he may be affected by some magic. I once saw a person completely turned into a snake under the influence of magic. Scamander Professor Mander thought for a while after he finished speaking. As for the existence of thousands of years, this is absolutely impossible. As long as any creature exists in the world, time will leave traces on it, even the basilisk that has been dormant for thousands of years is the same. According to my observation of that creature and what you said about its living environment, its lifespan exceeds 100 years, but at most no more than 500 years. No more than 500 years, this is interesting. Adam narrowed his eyes. Was the jackal head a slip of the tongue? Or did he misjudge the time in an environment without sunlight? Adam thought it would not be such a simple reason. Regarding that creature, I think we can conduct more in-depth research, in addition to the basilisk. Professor Scamander was obviously a little reluctant to finish the research that had just ended in a hurry. Just a few days of observation could not satisfy his curiosity. Of course, he was embarrassed to take advantage of his student and junior. You are very interested in magical animals, right? Do you want to come to my house this holiday? I have many friends I want to introduce to you. Of course, it's my honor, Professor, but I have already made plans for this year's holiday, and I don't know how long it will take. Adam still trusts Newt's connections in magical animals, animal connections. It's a pity that he has to go to China next summer vacation, and he doesn't know how long it will take to come back. It doesn't matter, we can contact each other using the portrait when the time comes. Scamander is not so anxious. With his strength, he can live many more years if nothing unexpected happens. Time passed quickly, and soon it was time to end the get out of class. Before the get out of class ended, Professor Scamander reminded. Everyone practice well after you go back. We will test it in the next class dancing this dance to get close to the manticore cub. Wait, what if we are attacked? Don't worry, I will communicate with Professor Snape and bring enough white mulberry essence. Professor Scamander smiled comfortingly, but the firmness in his words clearly revealed that he was not going to change his mind. The manticore dance is not difficult. My brother even won the first place. You can get the hang of it quickly if you follow my dance once. If you are still attacked after practicing for a week, the wound caused by a young manticore is very small. It will be a lesson for you who don't study seriously. Professor Scamander's eyes moved over each young wizard. The Care of Magical Creatures course is a course that requires great dedication. When you really practice, you are dealing with lives. I hope you can all take this course seriously. After class, Adam was attacked by 4 people before he could even speak. Ouch! 4 people were lying on top of Adam, who was thrown to the ground. It can be seen that they had a plan in advance. Ah, you cheated! Cologne was on the top because he was small, and he shouted angrily. I don't care. You have to dance that dance too. That's right. Bernard was also a little uncomfortable with the pressure, but it was not a big problem. You have to dance too. Although the other people said something different, it was roughly the same meaning. Okay, I got it. I'll jump. Hurry up and get up. Adam, who was holding the shield, patted the body above him helplessly. In order to prevent the weight of 4 people from really hurting Adam, Eugene and Uther secretly used their arms to support the ground, reducing some of the strength. Don't crush Eugene and Uther. Chapter 104. Let's make it clear first. Before dancing, Adam raised his index finger to emphasize. I will only dance this time, and I won't dance again in the future. Will there be more in the future? Cologne was startled, and then remembered that there were 75 kinds of magical beasts in Fantastic Beasts and where to find them, and his face turned green. We don't have to learn 75 kinds of dances, do we? How is that possible? Not all magical beasts can be approached by dancing. Uther directly refuted. And those magical beasts that are not so dangerous, we can approach them safely as long as we learn the spells class well. Oh, that's okay. Cologne breathed a sigh of relief, and Uther looked at Adam. Okay, I agree. Then the others also agreed. Anyway, Adam must dance this dance today. Adam nodded with satisfaction, then raised his hands and began to twist. Yeah. Seeing the 4 people's unbridled smiles, Adam's heart was calm. Laugh, the manticore dance is just a step up. Next time you learn the courtship dance of the Erumpent, I will film it for you. Back in the common room, everyone was about to share the weird knowledge they learned in class, but they found that the common room was already very lively. Professor Lupin had just taught them a class, and in the class he found a boggart for them to deal with. Naturally, everyone saw what each other feared. Ha, do you know? Cedric's boggart turned out to be coriander and cold mixed jet. What do you know? That smell is really terrible. Cedric had no shame on his face and blushed and retorted. It's much better than your durian dumplings, right? Durian dumplings are so delicious. Listen to what you said, are you talking like a human? Durian is scary enough, but durian dumplings are still eaten by humans? The trolls shook their heads when they smelled it. Classmate, I admit that the second half of your sentence is correct, but durian is obviously innocent. It is so sweet. Isn't there anyone afraid of matcha mustard bubble gum? Ugh, I even feel a little sick when I hear the name. Where did you get such a weird thing? The Weasley twins sell it there. I think it tastes good. SHH. You are really hungry. You can even eat this. Listening to the topic in the common room from boggart to food taste, Adam scratched his head. Everyone's boggart turned into such a strange thing, which should have nothing to do with him, right, maybe? Boggart? It seems that the professor of the Defense Against the Dark Arts class this time is finally interesting. Bernard's eyes lit up. His understanding of the wizarding world is always particularly in-depth in these strange aspects. Things like boggart obviously aroused his great curiosity. Do you want to guess what your boggart will be? I don't seem to be picky about food. Anything is fine. Cologne touched his chin and thought for a long time but couldn't think of the food he was afraid of. Boggarts will turn into things you fear, not food you fear. You can't form this weird stereotype just because the boggarts of the people who discuss the most are all edible. Adam shook Colin's shoulder. Oh, then, maybe it will turn into Puffy. As soon as Colin finished speaking, he was greeted with surprised eyes from his brothers. Why are you looking at me like that? Well, it's nothing, but I didn't expect you to be afraid of magical animals. Eugene paused. And it's Puffy. As a popular category among children's pets, Puffy's appearance can be said to be harmless to humans and animals. Adam touched his chin and said. I thought it would be Sadako. Sadako is also scary, but I am more afraid of Puffy. After struggling for a while, Cologne said affirmatively. You won't understand that kind of fear. Recalling that past, Cologne's face was full of unbearable memories. You will never know how much psychological trauma a 4-year-old child will have when surrounded by a group of Puffy and having their long tongues stick out and poke into his nostrils. Hiss. Everyone took a breath. You can probably imagine. No, you can't imagine it at all. Cologne looked hopeless, and then looked at them. What about you? What do you think your boggart will be? I don't know, I don't seem to be particularly afraid of anything. Eugene thought for a long time and shook his head. As for me, the mustard-filled dumplings and the assorted dumplings. Bernard looked at Adam. It really tastes so vicious. Cough well, that was made by the house elves. I just asked them to put all the ingredients in the kitchen into the dumplings. I don't know anything else. Adam looked away with a guilty look. Uther paused halfway through his words. It's probably something I encountered during the holidays. Uther was not very clear about what it was. Perhaps it was the self-protection mechanism of the brain. That memory was already a little hazy in Uther's mind, and he didn't know which part was the most terrifying to him. I'm not sure what my boggart will be either. Adam's words slightly broke up the somewhat stagnant atmosphere, and he scratched his head. Is there anything I'm afraid of? If he hadn't obtained the Book of Sealing, perhaps his boggart would be Voldemort, but there is a saying that fear comes from insufficient firepower, and now Voldemort is no longer enough to scare him. With curiosity about his own boggart, Adam welcomed their Defense Against the Dark Arts class. Good afternoon. With a faint smile, Professor Lupin chuckled and looked at each student in front of him, wearing that somewhat torn clothes. No matter what way, you should have known the content of today's class anyway. Yes, we have to learn how to deal with boggarts. When his eyes fell on Adam, for some reason, Professor Lupin suddenly felt a spasm in his stomach, and the horrible taste he tasted some time ago suddenly came to his mind. Hiss. Professor Lupin pondered for a moment, and remembered that Professor Dumbledore had told him that the desserts sold by this classmate tasted very good. It seemed that his body was reminding him that he needed some sweet comfort. Putting aside this sudden idea, Professor Lupin walked to the cabinet in front of the classroom, patted the cabinet and continued. Most of you should have a certain understanding of boggart, but as a professor, I still have to explain it to you. Boggart is a non-existence, likes dark enclosed spaces, wardrobes, under beds, cupboards under sinks. After less than 10 minutes of narration, Professor Lupin began to teach everyone the spell to deal with boggart. Funny. Professor Lupin led everyone to practice several times, and then planned to let everyone start the actual combat. This spell is not difficult, but it is difficult to cast this spell against boggart. Remember, what can really make boggart completely finished is laughter. What you have to do is not to recite the spell dryly, but to force it to become an image that you find funny. Raising the wand, Professor Lupin reminded again. With a slight movement of the wand, the door handle of the cabinet was slowly pulled open. Eugene, who was standing in the front, looked at a plate of fish in the cabinet, and a question mark slowly appeared above his head. Chapter 105. Fish? Eugene is afraid of fish? Are you kidding me? Cologne behind Eugene couldn't help but exclaimed. Could this boggart have changed too many forms yesterday and is broken today? Wait. After a while, the smell of the fish had drifted out. Smelling the subtle smell of fishy and sour smell, Bernard's expression behind Cologne also became subtle. This smell is... Gradually, more and more people smelled that smell, and their faces were exactly the same subtle. This smell is... Westlake vinegar fish. Among the unanimous exclamations, Eugene's voice was the most gnashing. Eugene could swear that it was the most devilish fish dish he had ever eaten from China. As soon as he took a bite, he felt like the fish on the plate suddenly jumped up and slapped him a dozen times. At the same time, there was an inexplicable sense of familiarity. This fish should be inserted into a square pancake plate, not lying on a ceramic plate. Just smelling this smell, Eugene couldn't help but blanched, and felt like he was about to vomit, but fortunately he remembered what he was doing now, and quickly raised his wand. Funny. The plate of Westlake vinegar fish suddenly turned into a grilled fish with good color, aroma, and taste, exuding a fragrance that made everyone in the classroom swallow their saliva. Adam, shall we have grilled fish tonight? Okay. It must be said that the grilled fish imagined by Eugene is really delicious, and Adam couldn't help but want to eat it. Professor Lupin's expression was a little strange. Obviously, the things that can fight against boggarts should be funny and ridiculous. A plate of grilled fish is so. Gulp, is it worth being happy? Well done, next. Cologne stepped forward, and then, not surprisingly, the boggart turned into a large group of puffs. Funny. The puffs that were about to pounce turned into inflated balloons, and then burst with a crackling sound, leaving only balloon fragments on the ground. Next was Bernard. When he walked forward, Boggart turned into a beautiful woman in a suit. The other party folded his hands in front of his chest and looked at Bernard coldly. You should go away with your father. All these years of hypocrisy are just my intention to make him leave the house. Funny. Bernard's face was very ugly. He was stunned for a moment before he remembered to draw his wand and quickly turned Boggart into a balloon clown that was swaying in place. Professor Lupin looked at him with complicated eyes. Are the thoughts of children nowadays so complicated? Well done, next one. When Bernard turned and walked to the back of the classroom, Uther and Adam both reached out and touched the back of his hand hanging by his side. Bernard turned his head slightly and nodded to them. Without time to think about Bernard's boggart, Uther took a deep breath and walked forward. A moment later, the inflatable clown ignited a raging fire in a twist. What Uther was afraid of was actually fire. The classmates looked at the flames in confusion and found that in the flames, 3 figures tied to metal frames slowly emerged, namely Uther, Adam and an adult male that no one knew. What was particularly surprising was that Uther's chest, including the clothes and the flesh underneath, had a big hole, and a scarab was lying inside. Many classmates couldn't help but step back half a step when they saw this somewhat scary scene. Seeing his own boggart, Uther's face turned pale at first, and after a few seconds of confusion, a flash of realization flashed in his eyes, and then he quickly raised his wand. Funny, funny. The flames rose up, and the person inside turned into a dog-headed man with a swollen nose and face, lying on the ground wailing and crying. Seeing this scene, Uther couldn't help laughing. Professor Lupin looked at the transformed boggart, especially the bruised wolf head, and couldn't help but fall silent. He suspected that the student had seen through his identity as a werewolf and was using this method to point him out, but he had no evidence. Well done, next one. Adam looked at Uther walking to the back of the classroom in confusion and decided to ask why he was also tied to the metal frame later, and then stepped forward. However, the dog-headed man didn't change for several seconds. Just when Professor Lupin couldn't help but start to doubt his life, he suddenly remembered that he forgot to turn off his shield. Originally, as a non-existent, the boggart's ability should be able to penetrate the shield's protection like the Dementor, but then Adam made a patch. Good news, after this time, Adam felt that his shield should be able to block the influence of the Dementor. Out of his boggart curious, Adam closed the shield, and then looked at the boggart with some expectation. Under Adam's gaze, the boggart finally began to change. The disemboweled Uther was lying on the ground, and he was almost the same as the Uther boggart just now. The only difference was that Uther was not wearing a shirt now. Professor Lupin couldn't help but glance at Adam. What's wrong with you two? A few shy female classmates in the crowd couldn't help but exclaimed in a low voice when they saw this scene, and quickly covered their eyes, but there were also some brave ones who stared at it with wide eyes. Wait, what's wrong with that male classmate? Then they paid the price for their actions. The green light flashed, and Cedric with empty eyes suddenly appeared and fell to the ground. The little wizards. One of the Weasley twins, Professor Snape, Professor Dumbledore, familiar and unfamiliar classmates and professors, and even the bodies of unknown people appeared one after another, and the ways of death were not exactly the same, which directly shocked everyone who saw this scene. Funny, funny. Adam was also shocked, but he quickly recovered from the shock, raised his wand and chanted a spell. The pile of corpses suddenly turned into flying confetti, scattered all over the ground in the air. Professor Lupin didn't speak for a long time. He seemed to see himself among the corpses falling like rain. In addition, there was a familiar figure, a figure that had escaped from prison. After taking a deep look at Adam, who seemed to be still in shock, Professor Lupin didn't say much. Well done, next one. Walking to the back of the classroom, Adam was surrounded by his roommates. Adam, why is your boggart so bloody? Bernard couldn't help but look at Adam with some concern. Well, it was just a nightmare. I don't remember it very clearly. After thinking for a moment, Adam gave a vague answer, then looked at Uther. Speaking of which, why was I, your bogtree, also in the cage of the lake of fire? The concern in Uther's eyes suddenly turned into embarrassment. At that time, your protective magic appeared around me, and I realized that you came to save me. But not long after, I began to worry, because I didn't know if you would encounter danger on the way, whether you could avoid Anubis's Libra. So I was afraid that you would be locked up there because of me. I see. Adam nodded in understanding. Chapter 106. So who is the weirdest boggart among us? Cologne suddenly spoke, and the 5 people looked at each other, and 4 of them raised their hands silently and pointed at Bernard. Bernard pointed at Adam. You are slandering. Is my boggart weirder than Adam? He and Uther had an unpleasant experience during the holiday, and it is normal to dream about something during the day, but your parents obviously have a good relationship, right? Cologne looked at him speechlessly. You are a persecuted maniac. You always doubt other people's feelings for you, but you are very devoted to other people's feelings. It's really weird. How can I? You don't, what nonsense. I'm worried about Bernard's future love life. Adam sighed with a mature look. If he is dumped, I think Bernard will be the type who sits up in the middle of the night and cries secretly, and writes letters to the other party while crying to ask what he did wrong. No, I think he is more likely to step on the other party, point his wand at the other party and coldly ask why he dumped himself, and then cry and make a fuss in his heart. Eugene's calm analysis was well reasoned and convincing. At first, Bernard's face was just red, and as everyone continued to tease him, his eyes slowly turned into circles. Ahem, okay, let's not talk about this. In the end, Adam's sometimes present conscience played a role and stopped the torture of Bernard. After class, Adam left the team alone. He was going to the Forbidden Forest for a special date. Have you been waiting for me for a long time? Carrying the dark staff and wearing new clothes, Adam came to his secret base. This is a wizard robe that he specially customized in a clothing store in the Muggle world, which takes into account both comfort and beauty, and looks roughly the same as that of Ario Irigisawa. There is even a matching hat. Under the protection of magical plants such as the Whomping Willow, Poison Tentacles, and Devil's Snare, 4 unicorns gathered here among the bushes. Seeing Adam coming, they stepped forward with joy and circled around Adam. Long time no see, I miss you too. To be precise, they haven't seen each other for a holiday, but judging from the surrounding situation, the unicorn family has protected this secret base very well during this holiday. Adam took out a few glass bottles and placed them on the shelf made of branches, then opened his hands to the unicorns. The unicorns rubbed against Adam in a friendly manner. The smallest unicorn was obviously more anxious. It didn't take long for it to bite Adam's sleeve and pull it towards the bushes in front. I know, don't worry. Reaching out his hand to stroke the other's soft, shiny hair like silver threads, Adam waved the dark staff, and a complex magic circle lit up under his feet. The bushes became fruitful in the blink of an eye: blueberries, strawberries, red currants, raspberries. The berries were all sweet and juicy, tempting people and animals. The unicorns stamped their hooves excitedly and plunged their heads into the bushes to feast on them. He also picked a blueberry and put it in his mouth. The refreshing sweet taste spread between his lips and teeth, which made Adam feel good and raised his mouth. Sure enough, the magic of the tree card is still needed to turn fruits and vegetables. Although the sweet card can also turn sweet fruits, it is probably due to psychological factors. The freshness and naturalness of picking fresh fruits are difficult to replicate. The dark staff knocked on the ground, and countless fruits on the trees, bushes, and vines ignored the restrictions of seasons and climate and bore fruits. At this time, a breeze happened to blow, bringing waves of intoxicating fruit fragrance. Apples, pears, watermelons, pomegranates, mangoes, grapes, cherries, sugar apples, longans, lychees. When dozens of fruits were picked and sent to them at the moment of maturity, no one could refuse. If there is, what about the seedless, peeled, cut and plated version? After playing with the unicorns in the Forbidden Forest for a while, he went to talk with the hippogriffs introduced by the unicorns, and then played with the moon beasts for a while. Adam had accumulated a lot of animal veins in the Forbidden Forest without realizing it. It was not until the sun set that Adam, who had a simple dinner of 3 meats, 2 vegetables, 1 soup, and various fruits, returned to the kitchen with a huge amount of fruit in his bag. A magic spell was used to remove the cores and peels, and then several sharp and shadowless people cut the fruits into small pieces suitable for eating, stacked them layer by layer, and placed them in a 12-layer glass plate with a central connection to prevent the smell from mixing, and then embellished with some jelly, chocolate and small cakes. A supreme luxury fruit tower was completed. After the plating was completed, Adam stepped into the Hufflepuff public lounge. The moment he entered the restroom, he became the focus of people's attention. The nearly 2-meter-high fruit tower floating behind Adam was really too eye-catching, and I don't know if it was because of the glass container, but under the light, the whole fruit tower seemed to be glowing. Adam! Several Hufflepuffs who were chatting walked up to Adam with somewhat erratic steps, and couldn't help swallowing their saliva when they saw the fruit tower. Is the one behind you a new product? No, Adam's store is now mainly run by Uther and others, and the speed of launching new products will be much slower, and I don't think that putting fruits on a plate and adding some small decorations can be called a new dessert. Adam waved his finger, and the fruit tower landed steadily on the table in the middle of the common room. Like last year, Professor Dumbledore commissioned me to be the chef for the Halloween dinner. In view of the fact that there are some unfriendly guys around the school this year, Professor Dumbledore added an extra sum of money and asked me to cheer everyone up through the Halloween dinner, so I prepared some surprises for this. Hearing this, the Hufflepuffs looked at each other. If that's the case, wouldn't it be a pity for you to let us know in advance? Senior Bruce asked everyone's thoughts. Oh? Of course not, because this fruit tart is not the surprise I mentioned, but it will indeed appear at the Halloween dinner if everyone responds well. Adam smiled and looked at everyone. So, what are you waiting for? Come and try it. First-year students, take the forks on the bottom layer. As for the rest of you, there is not enough room for so many people to stand at the table, so make good use of your floating spell. Come on, Adam, we will support you even if you make the most ordinary fruit-flavored gummy candy. Bruce's eyes wandered over the fruit tart for a while. As Adam's senior customer, he discovered that the protagonists of the fruit tart were still those fruits, and among those fruits, he shaved off those that he was familiar with. Bruce waved his wand, and a piece of white jade-like flesh floated into his mouth. Gently bit it, an incredible sweetness bloomed in Bruce's mouth. He even thought he was eating a candy, but the fragrance of the juice and the wonderful taste that splashed out made him clearly understand that this was not a delicacy that any kind of sugar could create. For all Hufflepuffs, the fruit tarts had fruits they had never seen before, and for a moment those candies and small cakes were somewhat neglected. While the fruit tarts were being consumed quickly, everyone couldn't help but become more interested in the surprises Adam mentioned. With everyone's anticipation, Halloween was slowly approaching. However, for the little wizards in the 3rd grade and above, the day before Halloween was actually very important. That was the day they could leave school and go to Hogsmeade to relax. Chapter 107. Early in the morning, Adam was dragged up by Cologne. Oh, don't sleep. Adam, do you remember that we are going to Hogsmeade today? Adam, who was still sleepy, rubbed his eyes, picked up Xiaoke who was also woken up and stretched, and took a sip. Then there is no need to get up so early. Speaking, Adam picked up SPI and took another sip. And why are you so excited? Is it because my food is not as good as the 3 broomsticks? Is it because my desserts are not as good as the honeydukes? Or is it because Fred and George's prank props are not as interesting as Zonko's joke shop? In addition to these shops, there are not many shops in Hogsmeade that attract people. But I still want to bring you guys go to my house and have a look. Hearing what Cologne said, Adam suddenly realized. Yes, Cologne, your shop is also in Hogsmeade. This time I can also see if there are any shops or houses for resale, just in time to buy them. After finally being able to leave the castle, Bernard, who was rarely putting on his shirt, slowly turned his head and looked at Adam. Can the money on you buy a shop? It should be enough. Adam now has several million galleons in his bag. If it is not enough, he can change it into 2 or 4. It can only be said that the goblins trust them too much to identify every real coin, so the inspection of galleons is entirely manual, which provides great convenience for Adam. Since they are going to visit Cologne's house, they must not go empty-handed. Bernard and his friends plan to buy some souvenirs in Hogsmeade. Although it is near Cologne's house, it is always a good idea to buy some daily necessities. Adam prepared a large box of long-lasting cakes. According to the current climate, they should keep them dry and can be kept for about a month. There was no way. Last time, Colin's sister Kelly's mental state was so beautiful that Adam couldn't help but worry about Colin's physical and mental health. After washing up and having a simple breakfast, everyone gathered in the castle's foyer. Filch held a long parchment scroll that almost hung down to his feet, staring at everyone's face, making sure that they matched the names on the list one by one, and no one had sneaked into the team. After checking everyone in the team, Filch took them to Hogsmeade, and turned around to close the door leading to the outside world from the foyer before leaving. Along the way, the classmates around were chattering about the destination that had been decided long ago. Colin looked at his roommates. My parents should have just opened the door at this time and are busy. We can go shopping somewhere else before going. How about drinking a glass of butterbeer first? Butterbeer? Can we drink? Adam raised his eyebrows. This drink contains alcohol. There's no problem with butterbeer. The alcohol content is very low. Even a young wizard won't get drunk. It has a mellow and dense taste and tastes good. Cologne shrugged. Although it's still worse than the drinks sold by Adam, at least it has alcohol in it. It's a novel experience for you and Bernard to try it. Even if Adam can sell sweets and drinks on campus, alcoholic drinks are obviously not available. At most, you can buy some rice wine by using the edge ball method of add more rice wine to rice dumplings instead of rice dumplings. The rice wine made by Gan brand is not intoxicating, so the professors turn a blind eye and let it go. People always have a natural curiosity about things that are forbidden to do, so butterbeer can still hold a place in the market when Adam's drinks almost dominate Hogwarts. Then let's go and try it. Adam touched his chin. He had never drunk butterbeer before. Ms. Rosmerta, the proprietress of the Three Broomsticks, was a charming woman. When Adam and his friends saw the Three Broomsticks, she was standing at the door enthusiastically inviting new third-year students to come in and try the barbecue set meal, which came with a glass of butterbeer. I heard before that because of you, Adam, the income of shop owners with food-related businesses in Hogsmeade Village has dropped sharply. It seems to be true. Cologne leaned close to Adam and whispered. If that's the case, Adam, should you pretend? Eugene hesitated and said. There may be many store managers in Hogsmeade who are dissatisfied with you. No need, I will open a store in Hogsmeade Village later, what am I afraid of them doing? Adam shook his head, his voice was light but full of confidence. I didn't have any malicious competition, but the business was still taken away by me. They should reflect on their own problems. I really want to hate you. If he didn't want to compete, he would directly put butterbeer on the shelves in the tavern, and sell it for 1 silver sickle cheaper than the Three Broomsticks. Anyway, even if this liquid was copied with double brand, it would not be visible at all, and the Three Broomsticks would completely lose its student customers. That's what I said. Bernard narrowed his eyes and dragged out a long-tail tone. If everyone thinks so, the crime rate in London can be reduced by at least 3 percentage points. If they attack me, it's not certain who will suffer the most in the end. As they were talking, they had already arrived at the door of the Three Broomsticks. Oh, all new faces, do you want to try the signature barbecue set meal in the store? Each set meal comes with a glass of butterbeer. Ms. Rosmerta supported her waist with one hand and rested her other hand on the door frame of the Three Broomsticks, with a warm smile on her face. No, 5 butterbeers will be enough. Okay, just order at the bar. The customer flow is quite large during this period, so customers need to pick up the food themselves. Hearing Adam's answer, Ms. Rosmerta's smile did not diminish at all. If you are a group of 5, there is a large table available inside the bar. Please walk to the left after entering. This lady boss is much calmer than I thought. I thought she would do more sales. After entering, Bernard nodded. Ms. Rosmerta is famous for her hospitality. Otherwise, the Three Broomsticks would not have become one of the most important attractions in Hogsmeade. Everyone who comes to Hogsmeade will come here to sit. Cologne explained, and then looked in the direction Ms. Rosmerta said. You go sit down first, I'll treat you. 5 butterbeers don't cost much. Everyone nodded and walked around the bar and a wall from the left, and found a round table in the space behind to sit down. Soon, Cologne came back with 5 cups of butterbeer. Hurry up! Come and take it, brothers. Wow, what a big cup! Adam was a little surprised when he looked at the cup used to hold draft beer. This cup was estimated to be more than 1 liter. Raising his hand, 5 cups of butterbeer floated up from Cologne's hand and fell on the round table. Adam, your levitation spell is really amazing. Cologne wiped the sweat from his forehead. If he used the levitation spell, he would not be sure that the butterbeer in the 5 cups would not spill out at all. I didn't expect the butterbeer in this store to be so affordable. Adam picked it up and took a closer look. This cup was really the real deal. The cup was filled to the brim. The foam on the top was not even 1 centimeter thick. The rest was butterbeer. The cups weren't this big before. It seems that Ms. Rosmerta made some adjustments to attract more business. Cologne took a big sip. The cold butterbeer had a special aroma, which made him let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the taste hasn't changed. Try it now. Adam and the others raised their glasses and drank. However, after taking a sip, before Adam could savor the taste of the butterbeer, he looked up and saw a red-haired, green-eyed figure passing through the wall of the Three Broomsticks, and then passing out again. Chapter 108. It's okay, Harry, no one will notice you. As they spoke, Hermione, Ron, and Harry each came over with a glass of butterbeer and sat down not far from them. Even if they noticed, who would know that your parents didn't sign for you and that you sneaked out with an invisibility cloak? Adam. He looked around, and the expressions of the other 4 people at the same table were also very subtle. Can't they see us? Cologne lowered his voice and asked this question with doubt. Adam glanced at the holly-potted plant between them and Harry's table. It didn't look like it could block them. If he couldn't recognize people, could he not recognize their school uniforms? Or? Adam glanced at the Badger House logo on his chest. Is their sense of presence so low? Thank you for having a drink with me. Harry sighed suddenly. Professor Trelawney's prediction really put me under a lot of pressure before. Are you still thinking about that prediction? Hermione's voice suddenly rose an octave. I told you, she's just a liar. Oh. Come on, Harry, don't listen to her, she doesn't care what others think. Ron interrupted Hermione rudely. The people at the next table were chatting so enthusiastically and so arrogantly that Adam didn't know whether he should continue chatting for a while, and at the same time he couldn't help but become a little curious about what they were talking about. After all, gossip is human nature. Comforting himself in this way, Adam drank a sip of butterbeer and pricked up his ears with peace of mind. Actually, before school started, Harry hesitated for a moment and told her about how he had blown up his aunt and left the Dursleys. What? Hermione exclaimed, and then asked Harry in a low voice, but Adam and the others could still hear it clearly. The Ministry of Magic didn't arrest you and put you in Azkaban. You didn't tell us this. Ron slammed the table excitedly. Without lowering his voice, Adam suspected that the wall could hear his voice. Then where did you live before school started? Why didn't you come to see us? I lived in the Leaky Cauldron, but that's not the point. Harry skipped the topic a little stiffly. The point is that when I just left the Dursleys, I really saw a big black dog at that intersection. So? Hermione was a little confused. There are so many black dogs in London. If Professor Trelawney said that your bad omen is a trash can, a street lamp or something else. No, I looked at the black dog at that time. The look in the dog's eyes, I can't explain it clearly, but I felt like I was looking at a person. The table next to me fell silent, as if they were shocked by Harry's story. Have you finished drinking? Let's go somewhere else. Eugene finished his butterbeer and put the cup on the table with a bang. The 3 people at the next table were visibly startled, especially Harry, who subconsciously reached behind him and almost jumped up from his seat. Adam glanced at the back of his chair, and it seemed that a piece of wood was missing. He remembered that Harry seemed to put something down before he sat down. Was it the invisible cloak? How did you eavesdrop on us? Ron's face flushed with anger. I remember you, you are Fred and George's brother, your name is Ron, right? Uther choked back without any courtesy. We have been sitting here for a long time, and you ignored our existence all the way. Who is interested in your little secret? You. Okay, Ron, Adam and the others were indeed there before, but we didn't see them. Harry pulled Ron's sleeve. If someone came in, they couldn't have missed it, so Adam and the others must have been sitting there before. In the situation where he was already in the wrong, coupled with the guilt that continued from last year to now, Harry didn't want to conflict with Adam. Okay. Ron looked at Harry and Hermione, then at the 5 people opposite him, and thought about it and sat back in his seat. Lowering his head, his eyes glanced in the direction of Adam. Harry was entangled. Last semester, Adam was in trouble because of him, and he had been wanting to apologize to him, but things like apologizing seem simple when you think about it, but when you really want to do it, it's extremely difficult to say sorry. Even if you tossed and turned until midnight the night before and firmly believed that you must apologize the next day, it would become apologize after dinner, apologize after class, apologize after class, apologize at night, and finally lie on the bed and become I must apologize tomorrow. Unaware of Harry's inner worries, Adam had long forgotten what happened last year. It was Adam's own intention not to attract attention because of the secret chamber incident. Harry probably just wanted Adam to get extra points and praise like he did in his first year. Even if he wanted to blame someone, he should blame Dobby. You can't take this cup away. You should sit for a while and wait until we finish drinking. Adam glanced at Eugene. He didn't know if he had listened to him just now, but he was really drinking butter beer. He turned a plate of fried peanuts, a plate of buttered melon seeds and a basket of popcorn on the table for Eugene and everyone to drink and relieve boredom. Adam picked up the butter beer and took another sip. I didn't taste it too carefully before, but now I taste it carefully. The butter beer is indeed delicious. The mellow and dense taste neutralizes the light bitterness of the beer well, making the aroma of malt more intense. It's a pity that he still prefers happy water and milk tea. Despite this, Adam still didn't turn the butter beer in the cup into something else. Instead, he enjoyed this cup of drink that was a bit novel to him, and then took a popcorn from the basket and threw it into his mouth. When the 5 people finished the butter beer, Adam took out his wand and waved it symbolically to clear the debris on the table, and then picked up the empty glass to leave. Hermione's eyes flickered slightly. I didn't expect Adam's learning progress to the point where he could silently cast the vanishing spell. Wait a minute, Adam. Harry gritted his teeth and chased after him. Seeing the 5 people in front of him turn their heads together, Harry almost bit his tongue, and at the same time couldn't help but regret chasing after them. This thought was extinguished by Harry as soon as it arose. He had already delayed it to the 2nd school year. If he delayed it any further, would he have to wait until graduation to apologize? Well, can I talk to Adam alone? Although he had made up his mind to force himself to apologize, Harry was obviously not ready to apologize in front of so many people. Adam didn't know why Harry was looking for him, but he didn't have to worry that Harry's strength was going to harm him, so he handed the empty cup in his hand to Cologne, who was closest to him. Please return it to Ms. Rosmerta for me, I'll have a word with Harry. Cologne took the glass, glanced at Harry, and nodded to Adam. Then we'll wait for you at Honeyduke's Candy Store. I heard that Honeyduke's Candy Store has launched several new products to attract customers, and they had discussed before that they planned to spy on the enemy. After Cologne and the others left, Adam looked at Harry. So, what do you want to talk to me alone about? Chapter 109. Well. Actually. Harry was confused, and the word sorry rolled over and over in his mouth several times but he couldn't say it. Before, Harry would come to him like a colander and spill everything out. This was the first time Adam saw Harry speaking so hesitantly. You can organize your words and come to me, or ask your friends to bring me a message. If there is nothing else, I will leave first. No, wait. Harry quickly grabbed the back of Adam's robe. Well, what I want to say is, I'm sorry. I mean before. After shouting out the sorry with all his might, Harry's voice suddenly became smaller. Sorry. Adam turned around with a puzzled look on his face. Why do you say that? It was before. I mean last school year. I told everyone about you solving the monster in the Chamber of Secrets. Oh, that thing. Adam nodded. Although he was a little angry at the time, he didn't take it to heart after that. I accept your apology. That's good. Harry breathed a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders, and then looked at Adam a little embarrassedly. I'm so sorry that this apology has been delayed until now. I'd better buy some gifts as an apology. What do you like? Adam didn't expect Harry to have this intention. Just when he was about to say that he had everything he needed, he suddenly remembered Harry's invisibility cloak. I remember Ron said just now that you sneaked out of school with the invisibility cloak. Harry. Harry quickly looked around and found that there was no one, so he breathed a sigh of relief. Adam was speechless for a while. How nice it would be if you had been so vigilant just now. After confirming that there was no one around, Harry began to think about what Adam said. From what he heard, did he want his invisibility cloak? Well, Adam, if you want an invisibility cloak, I can buy you another one. The one I have now is my father's legacy. I don't want the invisibility cloak, I just want to take a look, and I can return it to you right away. Ah? Just take a look. Harry blinked. Yes, I'm just a little curious about the legendary invisibility cloak, but I don't need it. As Adam spoke, his body gradually disappeared in front of Harry. You see, wizards have more ways to become invisible than just the invisibility cloak, there are other means such as the disillusionment charm. Wow! Harry's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but stretch out his hand, but he pressed it directly on Adam's face. Adam grabbed him in mid-air with a twitch of his eyes. What are you doing? Ahem, I just want to try. I didn't expect that I could be so perfectly invisible just by my own strength. Harry rubbed his hands with some regret. I'll get the invisibility cloak and show it to you. A minute later, Adam got the invisibility cloak as he wished. This invisible cloak is very light, and feels like a layer of flowing mist. One side is completely invisible, and the other side is like a silver veil. It's incredible. The omnipresent magic slowly flows on the surface of the invisible cloak, maintaining a spell that seems to last forever, and can automatically offset all visible magic effects. Although it still has a series of shortcomings such as being able to be located, unable to cover up sounds, and unable to eliminate physical collisions, this invisible cloak is indeed worthy of the title of a holy weapon in terms of invisibility. Adam shook the invisible cloak in his hand, turned it over, and held up the invisible cloak with one hand, covering the action of the other hand stuffing another invisible cloak into the bag. Although he can't use the invisibility cloak with the illusion card, just like he can't use Anubis's scale with the scale card, he is still very interested in copying this rare treasure to collect. I'll give it back to you. Well, is that all? You can take a closer look. No, just take a look with your own eyes. It doesn't matter if you take a few more or a few less. Putting the invisibility cloak away, Harry looked at Adam walking away and silently decided to buy an invisibility cloak for Adam. Honeyduke's candy store is not far from the Three Broomsticks. After Adam opened the door, he saw Cologne and the others at a glance. In addition to the four of them gathered together, there were only 7 or 8 people in the store. When Adam entered the store, there were 2 little wizards from Gryffindor walking out. Seeing Adam, the 2 disappointed eyes suddenly lit up. Adam? I didn't expect you to come to this store. Let me see the legendary new products, how does it taste? Oh! Don't mention it. One of them rolled his eyes. Old wine in a new bottle, it's called a new product, but in fact it's just a new taste of the old stuff. The selling point of the candies in Honeyduke's candy store is not only the sweetness of candy, but also some novel magic effects, such as ice cream balls that can be suspended from the ground when people suck, black pepper urchins that can make people spit fire from their noses, etc., which are incomparable to Adam's desserts. Despite this, the sales of Honeyduke's candy store were still squeezed extremely bleak by Adam. After all, no matter how interesting the effects of candy are, there is nothing new after trying a few times. If you really like to play, why not buy toys? And who has nothing to do and plays with fire from their nostrils every day? But Adam's desserts are not only delicious, but also return to the essence of desserts, and there are many varieties. Except for a few products that challenge the taste limits of wizards, the rest there are hundreds of thousands of them. If you eat one a day, you won't be able to taste them all in a school year. Originally, there was no choice, but now there is a choice. Of course, which store everyone buys depends on the hard skills of candy, of course, is the taste. Unfortunately, but realistically, even Professor Dumbledore, a senior customer of Honeyduke's candy store, will not stand on their side on this point. It can be said that the only remaining customers of Honeyduke's candy store in Hogwarts are for their only advantage over Adam's products, the fun effect, but the new product just has a different taste? What a joke! If it's for taste, who would come to Honeyduke's candy store now? In this way, it is not difficult to imagine the current situation of this place being so deserted. Is that so? Adam nodded. It seems that this place has run out of tricks. Are you Adam? Adam turned his head and saw that the person who spoke was a bald fat man, who was looking at him and walking towards him. Ah! The two young wizards were startled and ran away in a hurry. Before leaving, they did not forget to remind Adam. He is Ambrosio from, the manager of Honeyduke's candy store. Raised his eyebrows, Adam looked at Ambrosio and nodded. Yes, I am Adam. There are actually quite a few people named Adam, but they all know who they are talking about. I heard that you are also selling candy. Ambrosio spoke in a rough voice, walked in front of Adam, and then turned to look at his shelf. What do you think of the taste of the candy in my store? To be honest, it tastes good. Adam glanced and saw several familiar candies. I like your coconut ice cream very much. Hearing this, Ambrosio reached out and took a box of coconut ice cream and handed it to Adam. For you. Adam was stunned for a few seconds holding the box of coconut ice cream. Do we still need to go up to help? Bernard silently put the half-pulled wand back into his inner pocket and asked Uther beside him in a low voice. Well, let's take a look. Uther narrowed his eyes and looked at Ambrosio, answering in a low voice. Chapter 110. When they saw Ambrosio, Bernard and the others were ready to attack. If the other party planned to attack, 4 spells would attack from behind. But Ambrosio's move directly defeated them. What is this? Adam looked at Ambrosio in surprise. What does this mean? Courtesy first and then force. Honeyduke's candy store will be closed soon. Ambrosio did not answer Adam's question, but said this sentence with some loneliness. Adam did not say anything, but silently waited for the other party's next words. Ambrosio said this, it is impossible that he thought that he would be soft-hearted as a student, so he asked him to let them go. I asked many regular customers why they chose your candy over mine, and their answers were surprisingly consistent because your candy tastes better. Ambrosio paused, and then continued. But when I asked them what was wrong with my candy, they couldn't tell me, but it just wasn't tasty enough. From Ambrosio's words, Adam suddenly realized what he wanted to say. The other party obviously didn't simply regard making candy as a way to make money, but had a certain love for candy, and was able to gain a great sense of accomplishment in making and selling candy to everyone. As Adam's store continued to encroach on his customer base, his biggest concern was not the sharp drop in income, but why people didn't choose his candy, and what was wrong with his candy. And when he really investigated, the result made him a little confused. Taste? Mouthfeel? No one could say what was wrong, but the customer's reply was that it was not tasty enough. Nothing is wrong, but it just doesn't taste good. This is probably the biggest blow to a pastry chef or even a chef, not to mention that Ambrosio is a chef who loves his career and regards it as his ideal. You should know that Adam's current market is only within Hogwarts, while Honeyduke's customers include the entire British wizarding world. The impact caused by Adam is not even a serious injury to Honeyduke's, but the other party still decided to close the store. Obviously, his ideals were severely hit, so much so that he even had to give up this career. Adam re-examined Ambrosio. Well, he admitted that he had some stereotypes about this bald man with a lot of flesh at first, but now he seems to be quite cute. Now that I've really seen you, Adam, I want to know, what's wrong with my candy? Ambrosio couldn't help but look at Adam in confusion, and before Adam could speak, he said. Ah, forget it, this kind of business secrets, just pretend I haven't asked. Actually, it's not a business secret. Adam shook his head. Actually, what I make is not something very mysterious, basically all created by Muggle chefs. Muggle chef? Ambrosio was a little stunned after getting this answer. Wizards always look down on the power of Muggles, but they don't know that the biggest difference between humans and other creatures is not magic, but brains and creativity. Adam opened the box in his hand, took out a piece of coconut ice cream and took a bite. You are too obsessed with those magical effects, so your understanding of taste only stays on hard candy and soft candy, and whether to add fruits or spices. In contrast, Muggle chefs have no magic, but their creativity makes their works far more colorful than those of wizards. Adam took out another coconut ice cream, and the pink, glimmering pastry turned snow-white after passing through Adam's hand. "Try it." Ambrosio took it and took a bite, and couldn't help but stand there, his eyes blank. The crispy coconut on the outside, the soft glutinous rice in the middle, and the cold coconut ice cream inside bring rich taste layers, and the not-so-sweet taste complements the refreshing coconut fragrance. "Is it delicious?" "Delicious." Ambrosio ate the coconut-flavored snow meringue in a few bites and couldn't help but sigh. "Let me choose, I also like the candy you make more. It turns out that I have been on the wrong path for so many years." It can't be said to be wrong. After all, on the basis of deliciousness, everyone must also want candy to have strange effects, but these effects can only be added points and less harmless embellishments, and cannot become an obstacle to taste. Adam looked at Ambrosio, who was lost in thought, and suddenly an idea flashed. "You said that Honeyduke's candy store is going to close, so have you thought about what to do next?" "Oh? I was originally planning to travel with my wife to various places, to wizards' gathering places in other countries, to improve our candy-making skills. I have saved a lot of money over the years. When I think my skills have made new breakthroughs, I will reopen Honeyduke's candy store." Ambrosio glanced at his fingers still stained with coconut flakes. "But now, I think I will probably go to Muggle cities and try the candies made by Muggle chefs." "Well, actually, I have a suggestion. I wonder if you are interested." Adam looked around. "I actually plan to buy a store in Hogsmeade Village after graduation." "What?" Ambrosio was stunned. "So, you are interested in this store?" "I don't have any objection to this." "No, no, no." Adam stretched out his finger and shook it. "What I want to say is, are you interested in working in my store? I am not only interested in your store, but also in you, your wife, and the customer base and influence accumulated by Honeyduke's candy store over the years." Ambrosio frowned, and just as he was about to speak, he heard Adam say, "Don't rush to refuse, don't you want to know how my desserts are made?" Hearing this, Ambrosio swallowed back the refusal that was about to come to his mouth. "And even if you go to learn those recipes, they may not teach you. How much time do you have to learn?" Ambrosio's eyes showed obvious hesitation. "Become my employee. I can teach you things that you may not be able to learn even if you travel around the world." "Why do you want to do this?" Ambrosio couldn't help but speak. "You can complete the production and sales of candy by yourself. There is no need to recruit us, defeated opponents." Adam raised his mouth slightly. "Don't worry if you have any questions." Adam's mother in his previous life once said, "Customers who ask questions are the ones who really intend to spend money. Those who say to everything you say are just looking around." So Adam's talent in business can be regarded as a family tradition. "I don't think we are in direct competition, Mr. Froome. After all, our goal is to make customers feel happy and happy." Adam smiled and stretched out his hand to Ambrosio, silently strengthening the effect of the love card. The aura of intelligence reduction. No, the art of deception, activated. Chapter 111. Although I have achieved certain results in running a dessert shop, in fact, this is only a part of my plan. Adam talked about his business plan. "In this way, I will definitely not have enough energy to spend on running the dessert shop. At present, my shop in Hogwarts has been handed over to my friends to run on my behalf." Adam raised his hand and gestured to the four people behind Ambrosio. Although the four people could not hear the conversation between Adam and Ambrosio, they knew from the atmosphere between the two that the situation was probably not so tense, so they quickly put away their wands before Ambrosio turned around, and showed a friendly smile from the Badger courtyard when Ambrosio turned around. "It is foreseeable that I will definitely need someone to help me run the dessert shop business in the future, and my friends all have their own futures. In comparison, I would rather find someone who shares the same ideals as me to run my shop for me and bring happiness to more customers." Although the person in front of him was only a third-year student, Ambrosio still fell into serious thinking. While waiting, Adam also reviewed his business plan, which he had updated countless times in his mind. There are many fields he wants to try in the future. Formal restaurants and dessert shops are at least 2 stores. After all, a restaurant can have desserts, but it is impossible to put candy retail together. In addition, Adam also wants to try cinemas and clothing stores, and then the business of potion materials and potions, and the magical animal park he has thought about for a long time. If possible, he even wants to get involved in real estate. Although he has not been involved in these industries, he has enough funds and risk-taking ability anyway. It's okay to try, and failure is failure. As for other resistance, Adam will let the other party see who is more black, and the white. Adam can't help but think of Eugene and Bernard in his mind. These two guys have no plans for the future anyway. Originally, Adam wanted to hire them as store managers for him, but thinking about it, it's a bit of a waste of talent. Why not ask them who is interested in being the Minister of Magic after returning? I can't make a complete decision alone. I need to think about it with my wife. In the end, Ambrosio still didn't give a definite answer, but this answer itself already represented a certain tendency. No problem, then how about we discuss the sale of this store first? Adam suddenly remembered that there seemed to be a secret passage in the cellar of this store connected to Hogwarts, and buying it would be a win-win situation. No problem. Ambrosio agreed to this matter very happily. After all, the sale of the store was originally decided. Selling it to Adam is definitely more cost-effective than selling it to Gringotts or handing it over to other intermediaries to let the other party take a commission. As a popular store, Honeyduke's Candy Store has an excellent geographical location. The store is large and has a huge cellar that can be used as a warehouse. The original price was 200,000 galleons. In the end, Ambrosio proposed to sell it to Adam at a discount of 170,000 galleons, including the inventory in the warehouse. The discount is to be able to sell it directly. As for the inventory, it actually did not affect the price. The main reason is that Ambrosio did not think Adam would need those candies. The two completed the handover in the cellar on the spot. When Ambrosio saw Adam take out a full 170,000 galleons from his bag, his expression was quite wonderful. I'm not used to storing things in Gringotts, sorry. Adam spread his hands. He had even moved Nicholas Flamel's collection to a safe house with a space expanded by the wheel cards. Now the secret vault only had a maze made by the puzzle cards and dozens of dormant basilisks in it. If someone really broke in, I guess I could give the intruder a surprise. It's okay, I have a box with a traceless extension spell. The box Ambrosio mentioned was used for transporting goods. Although it was not as convenient as a suitcase, it was more convenient than carrying 1,000,000 gold coins. With the money handed over in one hand and the title deed handed over in the other, and the magic contract signed, the transaction was completed with the satisfaction of both parties. Then the remaining customers in the store were told with a confused look on their faces that the store had been transferred and asked to leave. From now on, this store will belong to Adam. The four of them realized what Adam had just done, but looking at the shelves around them, they still couldn't believe it. It still looks like Honeyduke's Candy Store now, and it will be much better when I renovate the store. Adam glanced around, and different areas could be filled with pastries, candies, cakes, etc. As for sweet soups and the like, they would be sold in the restaurant. But Cologne suddenly thought of something and couldn't help looking at Adam. Adam, didn't you say you were going to open a store next to my house? It doesn't matter, Cologne. The one next to your house is a restaurant, and the one next to this is a dessert shop. Then you can not only eat conveniently, but also buy candy conveniently. Adam touched Cologne's head very smoothly. The soft golden curly hair felt very comfortable to touch. It was just like a long-haired version of Xiaoke. Adam's expression was so familiar that it aroused Cologne's vigilance. Hey? Why does your expression now look like you are touching your cat, Adam? Wait, even the technique seems to be. Well. Because I think you, Xiaoke and Sibi are all very cute. Adam didn't wait for Cologne to respond, and then said. Are we going directly to Cologne's house next? Or are we going to other stores to shop? Let me think. Bernard, what time is it now? Cologne, whose attention was easily diverted, looked at Bernard. Bernard's eyes fell on Adam's hand that was still rubbing Cologne's hair. He couldn't help but be silent for a moment, then he took out his pocket watch and took a look. It's almost 10 o'clock. Well, my parents should be free at this time, let's go now. Cologne nodded, and then saw Adam waved his hand, and then all the candies in the store ran into his bag. Adam, these candies are you going to? I'm actually not very satisfied with the surprise I prepared for tomorrow. Adam patted the bag. But now this surprise should be tempting enough, dozens of boxes of candies from Honeyduke's. Although everyone is not so keen on honeydukes now, they should be happy if they can get them for free, right? What about the rest? Bernard looked at the bag and blinked. Adam should not spend extra time to pack the candies on the shelf. The rest. The candies displayed in the store were not a small number. Adam thought for a moment and looked at Cologne and Eugene. If the Hufflepuff team gets a good score this time, use it to encourage them. If they get a bad score, use it to comfort them. Eugene couldn't help asking. What is considered a good score and a bad score? First and second place are good scores, and third and fourth place are bad scores. So no matter what, they will be given to the Hufflepuff team, right? Don't tell other teammates in advance. Adam closed the door and pointed his finger at his lips to make a secret gesture. Aren't you going to lock it? Uther noticed that Adam didn't lock it. No, I've locked it. The blockade of the ingot is all round, for honeydukes. Oh, by the way, it's better to change the name of the store now to avoid misunderstandings. Adam moved his fingers, and the sign above the store, Honeyduke's Candy Shop, changed to Dream Dessert Workshop in cursive script. The words on the entire sign looked like candies in gradient colors. There was also a line of small words below. We will wholeheartedly offer you a sweet and dreamlike experience. Chapter 112. Dream Dessert Workshop. Why does this name sound similar to the magic trick shop of the Weasley twins? Bernard couldn't help but say. What's the difference? They are all our own businesses anyway. Adam waved his hand indifferently. But this sign is very beautiful. I can't help but drool when I see it. Uther was still very supportive. I can guarantee that you will drool even more after the shop is decorated. Oh. Uther's eyes lit up. Are you going to decorate the shop with desserts? Well, that's a good idea, but I still choose to decorate the shop like it is made of desserts, rather than really decorating the shop with desserts. In Adam's original idea, the Dream Dessert Workshop would indeed be built into a place like a candy house in a fairy tale. Biscuits, candies, bread. These can be ingredients or building materials for Adam. Anyway, the physical properties of the sweets made by Gan brand can be adjusted as desired. In fact, Adam had considered this idea before when preparing for the banquet, that is, even the tools for holding food were replaced with food. But Fred and George said that if the table was made delicious and tasty, no matter how hard it was, people would still want to eat it, and it might be gnawed down before the banquet was over. Adam thought it made sense, so he changed some pure chocolate tables and strengthened the hardness 3 times. Unexpectedly, the Gryffindor long table still had a missing corner in the end. When checking everyone's satisfaction with the food through the remaining food, Adam looked at the missing corner in silence and could only sigh that maybe someone just liked it. Facts have proved that even if the edible container is not delicious, there will still be people who can't help but want to take a bite. When it is officially open to welcome guests, there will be all kinds of guests, and there will definitely be more messes. Even if Adam makes those decorations as hard as carbonin, once someone still wants to try it, even if he doesn't bite off a piece of icing after nibbling for a long time, other guests will not have much desire to buy the candies on the shelves that have been gnawed. After weighing the pros and cons, Adam reluctantly gave up his original plan, but he didn't give up completely. He could get a bigger piece of land and create a paradise made of desserts, with the main feature being that every plant and tree there is made of desserts. Why not call it Dream Dessert Paradise? Or Dream Dessert World? Oh! We're here! Cologne's voice brought Adam back from his imagination, and he saw a small store in front of him. They were now on the edge of Hogsmeade Village. Although the store for rare animals was not big, the large fenced area behind it belonged to rare animals, and the store was just a place for trading. Colin took the lead and trotted to the door of the exotic animal shop and pushed it open. Dad! Mom! I'm back! Cologne? Why are you back? Accompanied by the puzzled voice, some hurried footsteps gradually approached. Adam followed Bernard into the store and saw a woman wearing a headscarf, an apron, and gloves with her sleeves rolled up, trotting towards them with a giant purple toad in her arms. Obviously, she was Colin's mother, Mrs. Mercy. Did something happen in Hogwarts? Mrs. Mercy glanced and found that not only her son came, but also several Hufflepuff students. After some recollection, Mrs. Mercy, who had just finished her busy work, remembered that today was the day before Halloween. It was also the day when Hogwarts students could come to Hogsmeade Village. She had signed before. There was no way. Exotic animals were the inheritance of Mrs. Mercy's parents. Mrs. Mercy grew up in Hogsmeade. When she was young, Mrs. Mercy was more lively. She never had any interest in coming to Hogsmeade. After graduation, even if Hogwarts students came to Hogsmeade, they would not go to places like Exotic Animals. Exotic Animals' main business was the large-scale trading of magical animals and magical animal byproducts, not a pet store like the Magical Animal Store in Diagon Alley. In any case, although she didn't like to go home when she was a child, Mrs. Mercy was still very happy to see her son come back, and her son also brought friends back. Time flies so fast, it's almost Halloween. Oh, you should write a letter in advance. Mrs. Mercy put the giant purple toad in the glass jar on the counter, wiped her hands on her apron, took off her gloves and threw them on the counter. Her movements were smooth and a little hurried, but her tone was not without excitement. Your father is coming to Datien went to discuss business with someone, your sister is investigating in India, I am alone at home, and I have nothing prepared. What do you want to drink? Sorry, there is only black tea and coffee here. It's okay, Auntie, we have prepared it, leave the lunch to me. Before that, Adam and the others mentioned the gifts in their hands. Where should we put these things? Hogsmeade Village is a gathering place for wizards. Unlike Diagon Alley, there are a large number of wizards living here in addition to the shops. Cologne's family does not live in the rare bird and animal shop, but also in Hogsmeade Village. After her son went home, Mrs. Mercy simply closed the shop and invited her son's classmates to her home for a treat. Cologne, isn't it a bit bad for us to do this? Mrs. Mercy glanced at Cologne's classmates who were lined up outside the kitchen, and whispered to her son. Let the guests cook lunch. It's better for me to do it. Although I'm a little anxious, I can still serve those specialties before you go back. It's totally fine, Mom. Cologne couldn't help but shudder when he heard the term specialty. Starry sky pie, haggis, beef pie, etc. were acceptable before he ate Adam's dishes, but now they have been demonized in his mind. What did Adam say? Once you've seen the sea, all other waters are but puddings, except, when you divide ocean, all are but clouds. Ahem, anyway, he really doesn't want to eat his mom's specialty anymore, and it's time for his mom to taste Adam's cooking. Adam's cooking is very good, and he doesn't need anyone else to help him. By the way, he plans to open a restaurant near our store in the future. If you think it's delicious, why not recommend it to our customers to try it? Mrs. Mercy raised her eyebrows, feeling the meaning of her son's words. Whether it was impolite to let the guests cook was secondary. The key point was that her dishes were not as delicious as his classmates. Speaking of which, after returning from Egypt, Kelly seemed to have mentioned that there was a classmate in Cologne whose cooking skills were very good. She had been thinking about it for so long and praised him to the sky. Could that classmate be the one in the kitchen now? Mrs. Mercy couldn't help but look at the kitchen. After thinking about it, she stood up and walked towards the kitchen. She wanted to see if the cooking skills of her son's classmate were as perfect as her son and daughter said. Chapter 113. Mom? What are you going to do? Sh. This is at home in Cologne, not in the dormitory. What will it look like if a piece is missing when the dish is served later? Adam used chopsticks to poke the crispy meat rolling in the oil pan, turned his head slowly, and then was shocked to find that the person who just reached out to the plate next to him and was hit by his chopsticks was actually Mrs. Mercy. Ah! Auntie, I'm sorry. I didn't see it just now. It's okay. Mrs. Mercy rubbed the back of her red hand, and her face flushed. Adam didn't use force. She screamed just now mainly because she was scared. She didn't feel it at first, but just felt that the food on the plate was so fragrant that she wanted to take a taste. After being stopped, she realized that the dish hadn't been served yet. In addition to the embarrassment of being caught eating secretly, she couldn't help but nod secretly in her heart. It seems that her son and his roommates get along very well, otherwise the scene just now would not have happened. When Mrs. Mercy nodded in her heart, she looked as if she was staring at the ribs in the plate. Adam quickly pushed the plate towards Mrs. Mercy. I think the temperature is about right after frying it like this. Auntie, try it and see if it needs to be adjusted. Mrs. Mercy came to her senses and realized that Adam seemed to have misunderstood something. However, as the plate got closer, the smell of fat and spices became stronger, so she did not clarify the misunderstanding, but nodded with a smile. Then I'm welcome. Be careful of the heat. Adam reminded Mrs. Mercy and continued to stare at the crispy pork in the pot. This plate is a fried food platter, with red fermented rice ribs, fried 5-spice rolls, salt and pepper ribs, crispy fried yellow croaker, fried potato wedges, crispy pork and fried sausages. Although there are still crispy pork and fried sausages left to be served, the dish has already taken shape. Mrs. Mercy was a little embarrassed to start after choosing for a long time. After all, Adam had just said that it would be a bit rude if there was a piece missing from the plate when it was served. "Auntie, why don't we finish this plate directly in the kitchen?" Uther, who had already followed Mrs. Mercy into the kitchen and had been eyeing the fried food platter for a long time, suggested silently. "Ah! This is not good." Gulp. "It's not bad. It ruins the presentation of the dish. It's okay if it's not served on the table." Eugene followed. Bernard glanced at the pots on the other two stoves. Fried food is originally a snack as an appetizer. It doesn't matter if it's not served on the table. When they were in the dormitory, the fried food platter rarely made it to the table. Although Adam would hit them with the tail of his chopsticks if they ate secretly, Adam would not really use force. Usually, the four of them would eat while resisting Adam's chopsticks attack. The most serious consequence was that the backs of the four people's hands were hit red. After Adam got used to it, he would not stare at them and hit them. "It's okay, Auntie, you guys eat, remember to order colon." Rolling his eyes, while Mrs. Mercy walked out of the kitchen to order colon, Adam used a scoop net to pick up the crispy pork, drained the oil, and poured it neatly into the plate. "A bunch of greedy ghosts, eat it, be careful of the heat." Eugene nodded repeatedly while gnawing on the small yellow croaker that was fried crispy even on the bones. After the fried food platter paid the price of sacrificing itself, the other dishes were safely served. Puff pastry cream mushroom soup. Yupin pot. Fried fish. Seared beef head. 13 spice Provence stew. With the names of the dishes, everyone at the table couldn't help but swallow their saliva when each dish was served. Adam originally wanted to serve the dishes in the order of the meal, but the appetizers died before they were served, and this was not a serious dining occasion, so all the dishes were served together. Mrs. Mercy looked around and couldn't help but nudged her son with her elbow. "You usually eat at school. This." She was worried about whether her son would be able to get used to the food at school, but it turned out that this was too good. Cologne thought how could it be possible, even they couldn't eat Adam's food every day, they still had to go to the auditorium to eat some grilled sausages, toast and baked potatoes. Time was tight, and there was no time to prepare more, so I made some simple home-cooked meals, please enjoy. Adam sighed with some regret. He was not modest, the Yupin pot and fried fish were semi-finished products prepared for tomorrow's banquet, and they could be made by copying and heating them. The remaining 3 Western dishes took less than an hour in total. "Is this a home-cooked meal?" Mrs. Mercy looked at her son in disbelief. "What do they usually eat at school?" Cologne wanted to say that it was not a big deal for him, but thinking about the big dishes that Adam said took half a day, or even several days to prepare, he could only be vague. "Adam has high requirements for food." "Oh, high requirements are good, high requirements are a good thing." Mrs. Mercy nodded, looking thoughtful. Seeing this, Cologne quickly reminded his mother, who seemed to be distracted. "Mom, hurry up and start eating, everyone is waiting anxiously." Mrs. Mercy looked up and found that everyone was looking at her, so she quickly picked up the fork. "Everyone, let's eat." As Mrs. Mercy picked up a piece of puff pastry covering the opening of the ceramic jar and put it into her mouth, everyone raised their chopsticks and showed their fangs. Mrs. Mercy didn't have time to be reserved for a few seconds, and she saw that the fried beef head was almost divided up, so she immediately threw away her reserve and joined the battle. After a hearty battle for food, Mrs. Mercy was at a disadvantage because her tools were not flexible enough, but she was still satisfied with the meal, picked up the Coke and shared her life in Hogwarts with everyone. It turns out that Auntie is also a senior of Hufflepuff. Cologne couldn't help but glance at Adam. He remembered that he had talked about this with Adam. "Yeah, so when I see you now, it's like I see myself in the past." Mrs. Mercy smiled and looked at the group of young men in front of her. "Time, it really slipped away from my fingertips without paying attention. The days when I helped Susan to plan and chase that Gryffindor big fool seemed to have just happened yesterday." Cologne couldn't help but take a sip of Coke. Susan is the owner of Fenja brand wizard clothing store? But he remembered that her husband was not a Gryffindor, and he also claimed to be Aunt Susan's first love. Hiss. Before Cologne finished sighing that the world of adults was so complicated, he heard his mother's next words. "Speaking of which, you are also at the age of falling in love for the first time." Do you all have girlfriends? Although Mrs. Mercy's posture was casual, her smiling eyes were focused on Adam's reaction. Cough cough. Chapter 114. Not yet, we are all single now, should we? Speaking of this, Adam looked at Bernard and Eugene on the left. I'm single. Eugene's answer was simple and straightforward. Why are you looking at me? I'm single too. Bernard spread his hands. You and Uther are the most popular among us. You should be the first to get out of singlehood. Probably because of his bloodline, Adam's appearance combines the advantages of Eastern and Western looks, so he became the most handsome among the 5 handsome guys. Uther also looks a bit exotic because of his mixed blood. Oh? Adam and Uther are very popular. Mrs. Mercy had a look of a badger eating melon. Why are you still single? Don't you have anyone you like? I have no intention of finding a partner in the UK, unless she can completely immigrate to Egypt like my mother did back then. Uther shrugged. Mrs. Mercy was a little stunned when she heard this answer, but her main purpose of asking was not for Uther. After nodding with an expression of understanding, Mrs. Mercy looked at Adam curiously. Well, I'm really not very moved. Oh? Do you think those girls are not pretty enough? It has nothing to do with whether the other party is good looking or not, but we have no emotional foundation before. I think even if love is not as formal as marriage, it is also something that needs to be taken seriously, so I don't want to be too casual. Well said. There are not many children nowadays who are so responsible. Mrs. Mercy's eyes lit up, and then asked. So, in fact, there are still girls you think are pretty? Are there any suitable for Cologne? Cough. Cough. Cologne almost choked on a mouthful of coke. I want to ask, what kind of girl do you think is pretty? Feeling her son's rejection of blind dates, Mrs. Mercy returned to the topic with some regret. Well, this question is a bit broad. It depends on your liking. Oh. Then let me be more specific. Do you think long hair or short hair is better? I think. Do you prefer someone older or younger than you? What about height? Adam is used to this kind of small talk. It feels like the questions from relatives and elders during the Chinese New Year in his previous life. You don't need to answer this kind of question too seriously, because the person asking the question is not serious. Just give a serious answer, and don't reply in a random way that it's obvious that the answer has been read, and keep the topic going. But Cologne was sweating at this time. He had heard what his mother wanted to do. She wanted Adam to become his brother-in-law. His mother had already asked the question precisely to the point of whether he could accept his future partner working in magical creatures. Recalling the impressions that this sister, who was 10 years older than him, had left on him since childhood, she sprinkled cattail feed on him, causing him to be surrounded by a group of cattails. The drift of the sled threw him into the pile of moon idiot dung, and used a silver-painted augury eggshell to pretend to be a bird snake eggshell to cheat him out of his pocket money. Colin immediately put on a mask of pain. Isn't this pushing Adam into the fire pit? No. He can't sit back and watch this happen. Adam's happiness is saved by me. Ah. Look at what time it is now. We still have a lot of plans to visit Hogsmeade Village. Colin suddenly interrupted Mrs. Mercy and Adam's chat. Ah? Oh. Adam looked at Colin in confusion, and then nodded knowingly at Colin's hint. Indeed, it seems that besides him, Uther, Bernard and Eugene are not very adaptable and have no sense of participation. This won't work. It's better to go for a few more rounds or return to the castle early. After a farewell, Mrs. Mercy reluctantly sent off several of her son's classmates, especially Adam, who was walking at the end, and then took her son back home and closed the door. Mom. Cologne, who failed to leave, looked at his mother with an innocent and puzzled face, trying to awaken his mother's love. Don't try that. Mrs. Mercy reached out and pinched Cologne's nose fiercely, shaking it left and right. What's wrong with you? Can't you see that I'm helping your sister explore the way? What's the point of exploring the way? My sister is 10 years older than Adam. Cologne shook his head and broke free from Mrs. Mercy's hand, rolling his eyes and rubbing his red nose. What's wrong with being 10 years older? I'm still 4 years older than your father. Is there a big difference between 4 and 10 years old? Mrs. Mercy said confidently, and then sighed. Alas! I found out that your sister liked I was a little worried when I saw your classmate, but now they seem to be a good match. Adam looks like a reliable kid, and he has already planned for the future. His future workplace is not far from home. Cologne? Wait. Mom, why do you think sister likes Adam? Cologne thought that the posters in Kelly's room were either gypsies clapping tambourines and showing their abdominal muscles, or muscular Quidditch players riding broomsticks. Judging from the skin color and figure, he believed that his mother said Kelly liked Uther or Eugene, but Adam, did Kelly see Adam without clothes? Didn't you hear Kelly talking about Adam every day? Even if Adam's cooking is delicious, can it make people like that? Why am I not so exaggerated? Kelly must have fallen in love with Adam. Mrs. Mercy rolled her eyes, and then looked at her son who didn't care about love with a look of disappointment. You should be more sensitive to such things, don't be so stupid that you can't see when a girl likes you. Mom doesn't ask for much, even if you bring me a... Okay, Mom. Cologne interrupted his mother. How old am I now? It's too early to think about such things. And will you be obsessed with Adam because the food you cook is delicious? At this point, Cologne's expression was a little complicated. Why don't you try a few more bites of the food you cook? Mrs. Mercy frowned, always feeling that something was wrong with her son's words. By the time she reacted, Cologne had already taken the opportunity to push open the door and run away. You little bastard! Looking at her son's running back, Mrs. Mercy was furious, but then frowned again. Am I really wrong? Let's try making a few of my signature dishes tonight. Even if they are a little different from what Adam makes, they can't be that big, right? Hey! I'm back! Cologne wiped his sweat as he returned to the team at an intersection not far from home. What did Auntie say to you again? Oh, nothing. Faced with Adam's question, Cologne couldn't help but look away. Just told me to study hard and not make trouble in school. Oh. Adam didn't doubt it and looked at the others. Where are we going next? Well, I don't have any plans, I'll go with you. Uther shook his head. Then let's just walk around. Bernard suggested, and everyone agreed, so they just walked along the path, and soon they came to the door of what looked like a store. The store's sign was tattered, as if it was not a clean storefront. There was a white cloth bundle hanging under the sign, and a fishy smell came with the wind. A group of people couldn't help but frown slightly. Chapter 115. What is that place? A recycling station. It seems there is no such thing in the wizarding world, Bernard. Adam stared at the sign for a while, and finally made out what the crooked words on it said. The Hog's Head. That's the Hog's Head. Uther looked at Colin who was exclaiming beside him, and couldn't help but say. Didn't you grow up in Hogsmeade? Why don't you know the Hog's Head? That's a bar. I've only been to the Three Broomsticks twice with Kelly, not to mention this. Cologne looked at the Hog's Head, which was obviously dirtier than the Three Broomsticks, and his eyelids jumped. A bar. Then, Colin turned around and planned to leave. Let's go, there are sometimes a lot of weird people in places like this, it's best not to get close. Oh. Hearing Colin's words, Bernard's eyes lit up. Weird people, a dirty bar, this is not a black market or illegal trading gathering place, right? Adam's eyelids twitched when he heard it, and he looked at Colin. Why did you remind him? 2 minutes later, Bernard successfully persuaded everyone to go to the Hog's Head with him. I advise you not to hold your hopes too high. Adam sighed and poured cold water on Bernard who was waiting in high spirits. The owner of the Hog's Head is Professor Dumbledore's brother. Even if someone conducts illegal transactions in private, it is unlikely to become a black market. Professor Dumbledore's brother. Uther glanced at Adam. Adam, who knows everything, you know this again. Since you plan to open a store in Hogsmeade, it is reasonable for me to do research on Hogsmeade in advance, right? Adam looked as if it was a matter of course. Pushing open the door of the Hog's Head, Bernard's eyes dimmed a little after scanning the area. The cups on the bar counter were covered with a layer of turbid oil, a few drunkards were lying on the table in the corner, and there was a pool of vomit on the ground that had not been cleaned up. All of this showed that this place was indeed as Adam said, it was just an ordinary bar, and it was a very low-level one. The only thing that made people's eyes bright but also confused was the portrait on the wall of the bar. The melancholy girl did not match the style of this bar at all. Adam looked deeply at the portrait, and when he saw a certain part, his pupils shrank, and then the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Get out! A loud voice sounded like thunder, and Adam and his friends followed the sound and saw a tall, thin, grey-haired and bespectacled old man walking towards them. "Little brats who are still studying at Hogwarts, this is not the place for you to come." Aberforth Dumbledore just took a look at their school uniforms and began to chase them away rudely. The 4 people who didn't want to come here turned around and left immediately. Bernard wanted to stay for a while to observe, but he was pushed out before he could say anything. "Oh my god, is that old man related to Hagrid?" Bernard bent his arm and pinched his biceps. Although he was not as gifted as Eugene, he still had some muscles. Why was he pushed by an old man over 100 years old and had no power to fight back? "Don't think too much. You've seen it just now. There's nothing you want. Let's go." Adam sighed and patted Bernard on the shoulder. "If you really want to see something exciting, wait until you can beat Uther and me in dueling, and I'll recommend a place for you." "Hey? How does this have anything to do with me? Aren't you in need of a sparring partner?" "Bernard's hobby is a bit dangerous, so you two can improve together." Uther really learned a lot from Professor Flitwick. According to him, Professor Flitwick said he was very talented and could participate in the youth group competition of the dueling competition before graduation to gain experience. During the summer vacation, Uther also planned to find Adam as a practical sparring partner, but he had no dueling experience at all. Even if Adam didn't use the magic he learned from the Clow cards, who could stand the fact that all the combat spells were silent and wandless? As for forcing Adam to use a wand to perform the casting movements and recite the spells before casting? Regardless of whether Adam can get used to it, Uther is not thick-skinned enough to do that. Looking at Bernard with a burning gaze, Uther nodded after a little thought. "This seems to be a good idea. It just so happens that Cologne and Eugene will be training Quidditch next, and Adam will be an assistant coach. Without 3 brothers to play with, the 2 of them have nothing to do in their spare time except helping Adam set up the stall. I didn't know what to do for a while, and now I have something to do." Bernard actually had some objections to this request at first. Whether he could beat Uther or not, when he could beat Adam, wasn't Adam's decision. But after thinking about it carefully, Adam was not the kind of pedantic guy who said it's not good to go to the black market, so I won't let you go to the black market. He would stop me only because my strength was not enough to return safely from the black market. After thinking about this, Bernard accepted this request. He didn't know the black market for wizards, but he knew the black market for muggles. If he didn't have enough strength to go to the black market, he would be delivered to the door. Before that, he should hone himself well. Seeing that both of them accepted it, Adam was also very satisfied with it. In fact, he had another purpose that he didn't explain, that is, Uther learned dueling from Professor Flitwick. Adam was a little worried that his fighting style would be influenced by Professor Flitwick and become too academic. In short, he might be too rule-abiding, and it would be easy to suffer when encountering unruly people, and Uther's identity meant that his opponents would not be very rule-abiding. Bernard is the kind of wilder person. The good news is that he is not afraid of encountering unruly people, because it is more likely that he is more unruly than the other party. The bad news is that people can't help but worry that he will break the law and report to Azkaban after the fight. It is very troublesome to rescue someone from Azkaban. If things go wrong, Voldemort will come back to life and blow up the Ministry of Magic and Azkaban again. Adam feels tired just thinking about it. Now these 2 people are practicing against each other, just to get along with each other and learn from each other's strengths. It's perfect. After that, the 5 of them wandered around Hogsmeade for a while, such as Zonko's Joke Shop, a famous attraction in Hogsmeade. I used to think the toys in Zonko's Joke Shop were good, but now I see, they seem to be worse than Fred and George. Cologne's expression was a little disappointed, that was the expression after the beautiful memories of childhood were broken. Zonko is too old. He has emptied his mind of ideas. Fred and George are younger and more creative. You think it's normal? Will they be like this when they get old? Maybe. I'm not sure. Adam recalled that there was only one twin left in the original storyline who loved to laugh and make trouble. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes might not launch new products in a few years. It's hard to imagine how painful George would feel to come up with prank props by himself after Fred's death. Which one would be more tormented to look in the mirror? After getting along with each other, Adam realized more deeply what kind of big knife this was. In the 2 years since he first met the twins, he has never seen them separate. They even go to the toilet together. Well, the twins can't die like before, but I can't eat the knife alone. I have to find a way to send the knife out. When he graduates, maybe he can write a set of Harry Potter to publish. That way, I can send out all the knives that have been used, but I feel like Professor Snape will come to my door if I do that. Chapter 116. The third-year student's first trip to Hogsmeade ended with the creaking of the castle gate. On the way back, Eugene looked at Adam. Have you picked a good location? The location for the store. Adam thought for a moment. I have picked one, what's wrong? Nothing, where did you pick? I'll see if there are any houses for sale next door. Good idea. Bernard's eyes lit up. It just so happens that I plan to buy a property in the wizarding world in the future, so why not in Hogsmeade? Tisk. I always feel that I should invest in developing a piece of land myself and then open a restaurant there. The fact that his own restaurant can also attract people to stay in the surrounding area is a development that Adam had never imagined. No. Rare birds and exotic beasts has been open in Hogsmeade for so many years, it's very troublesome to move. Cologne held Adam's arm and refused to let go. Okay, I've promised you. When the time comes, I'll invest in land and open branches, cinemas, theme parks, etc. Theme park? Cinema. Bernard's expression was subtle for a moment. You want to open a D? Ahem. It's hard to say. I plan to build a dessert park. It has nothing to do with that company. Adam coughed. Who knows if that company has a legal department in the wizarding world? In my imagination, there should be fountains spraying soda, waterfalls formed by chocolate, carousels made of various fruit candies, bumper cars made of soft candies, and castles that look like cakes and taste like cakes. The trees on both sides of the road are wafer biscuits of various flavors, covered with donuts, chocolates, and toffees. I think many people should be interested. Hiss, like me. No, it's us. Obviously, the paradise described by Adam is very attractive to everyone, but what comes next is Adam's cold water. But now the paradise is still a distant thing, so I'd better go to bed early, I'm still busy tomorrow. Although he said he was busy tomorrow, Adam still took 3 naps in a row and got up at noon. Finally waking up, Adam turned into an animagus form, used the cat's flexible body to stretch his waist, which would break the human form, and shook his fur before changing back to human form comfortably. After picking up Xiaoke and Si Bai and taking a deep breath, Adam turned over and got out of bed, full of energy again, half a day. What time is it now? Cologne's muffled voice came from under the quilt. Let me see. Bernard stretched out his hand from under the quilt, and his white arm quickly got goosebumps in the cold air. After touching the pocket watch on the bedside, Bernard quickly grabbed the pocket watch and put it under the quilt. 11:42. Dinner won't be until 5:30, it's still early, sleep a little longer. Adam, who was changing clothes by the fireplace, looked puzzled when he heard this, and turned to look at the quilts on the other 4 beds. Are you planning to sleep until dinner? Cologne's quilt moved, but he didn't get up in the end. Well. What's the matter? There are 3 days of vacation anyway, and it's still in time to do homework on the last day. Anyway, there will be nothing delicious at noon, so it's better to save your stomach so that you can eat more at night. Bernard quickly reached out and put the pocket watch back on the bedside, and then immediately retracted his hand into the quilt. Uther pulled the quilt to expose his head, and felt the cold air with a head of half-long black hair that was messed up by sleep, and then retracted it again. Well. I don't want to get up in such a cold day, I'll do my homework after dinner at night. Eugene's sleep quality is still so reassuring. Well, I was going to take you to the kitchen to try a few dishes from the dinner party and my new side dishes for lunch. Wait for me for 2 minutes. Adam. No, Eugene, when did you get up? Anyway, when Adam finally came to the kitchen, there were still 5 people following him. Well, in addition to the 4 roommates, there was also Cedric who had been waiting at the kitchen door. I knew that you would definitely get up at noon in this weather, and have lunch directly in the kitchen. Cedric looked as if it was not my expectation and I was really smart. Opportunities always come to those who are prepared. Okay, then the prepared Cedric classmate will sit at the Hufflepuff table with Uther and the others to wait for the dishes. I'll say it first, keep your voices low while waiting for the dishes and eating, and don't make trouble. Adam snapped his fingers and changed himself into he put on a chef's uniform, picked up the knife and turned it around in his hand for a few times, and looked at the 5 people with a strong sense of oppression. It's the pressure from the breeder. 5 badgers sat in a row beside the long table and nodded obediently. The kitchen of Hogwarts is right below the auditorium, and the 4 long tables also correspond to the 4 long tables in the auditorium. Professor Dumbledore's magic is to summon the food on the long table in the kitchen to the long table in the auditorium just above. Uther and the others chose the seats they were used to sitting in the auditorium, and then looked at Adam with admiration as he skillfully directed the group of house elves, assigned them tasks, and made the whole kitchen start like a precision-operated machine. While the house elves began to make preliminary preparations for the dinner, Adam took out the materials that he had prepared half of last night and processed them. Nearly half an hour later, he walked towards them with the pots, bowls, plates and kettles floating behind him. Professor Scamander said that he prefers vegetarian food and cannot eat spicy food, so I specially prepared a few dishes for Professor Scamander at this dinner. Please help me see if they suit his taste. A plate with white roses fell on the table first, and each rose was covered with different colored sauces. Colorful yam puree, I made 4 flavors of blueberry jam, cherry jam, raspberry jam, and osmanthus honey, which can be regarded as appetizers or desserts. Which flavor do you like better? Everyone has become accustomed to the communal dining system under Adam's training, and even learned how to use chopsticks. With Adam's explanation, they have divided up those white and crystal roses. Delicious. Really delicious. Don't just sigh, which one is more delicious? The 5 people looked at each other, tasted other flavors, and finally looked at Adam. All delicious. Then they couldn't help but look behind Adam. Forget it, you are used to hard times, I shouldn't have too much hope that you can give a professional evaluation. Looking at the empty plate, and his mind had already flown to the other behind him, the 5 people on his menu, Adam covered his face with his hand, waved his other hand to control the other dishes in the air to fall on the table. Winter bamboo shoots fried with black fungus, sweet potato with candied silk, eggplant fish, 4 happiness roasted gluten, shepherd's purse tofu soup, dingo shangsu, and finally this boiled cabbage, etc. Looking at the 5 people who were eating so hard that they couldn't even hear the names of the dishes, Adam couldn't help but feel itchy with his chopsticks clenched, and even wanted to give himself a power buff, but finally sighed. Originally, I wanted to say that there were still a few elbows in the pot that had been stewed overnight and were already mushy, but now it seems that they don't have the heart to eat. Chapter 117. Eat this first. It has to be hot. It won't taste good if it gets cold. Adam pushed one of the plates that looked like a dessert. The purple main body was placed in a small orange with the flesh hollowed out. It looked cute and delicious. Be careful of the heat. Adam kindly reminded them. Thanks to this reminder, the 5 people who were prepared did not get burned, but were later attracted by the soft and glutinous texture and sweet taste of this dessert. Is it delicious? Delicious. It's delicious, eat more. What is this? After all 5 people finished eating, Adam smiled and answered. Fat bomb. The 5 people who picked up their chopsticks and were about to attack other dishes, what? Fat bomb, also known as taro paste. Putting aside special cases such as potions, after research by Muggles, the factors that cause people to gain weight in food are mainly carbohydrates, fats, and sugars. Adam stretched out his hand and pointed. Carbohydrates betel nut taro, fat lard, sugar white sugar, the only 3 ingredients of taro paste are the best of these 3, and because betel nut taro has a very high starch content, as long as it is eaten while hot, even if a lot of lard and sugar are added, it will not feel too greasy or too sweet. Adam pointed to the remaining orange peels on the plate as the faces of the people in front of him, especially Cedric, turned pale. I also put the taro paste in the fruit container, plus you generally like heavier sweetness, does it look like a healthy illusion? It tastes only very lightly sweet? What? I just became a seeker, I have to keep in shape. Cedric covered his face with his hands, with a collapsed expression of being deceived and played by a scumbag, looking a bit like a world-famous painting, and then laughed out loud. Haha Adam, you can't fool me, you won't do this to us. Looking at the faint smile on Adam's face, Cedric felt a little scared and couldn't keep the smile on his face. You won't do this to us, right? Ah, that's natural. Adam widened his smile meaningfully and pushed another dish. Try this one again. Looking at the dish that looked equally healthy and light, the 3 who had joined the Quidditch team fell into deep thought. Uther and Bernard stretched out their chopsticks fearlessly. If you want to eat, don't be afraid of getting fat. If you're afraid of getting fat, don't eat. In the end, the 3 members of the Quidditch team still felt that they could lose weight by doing more exercises, but if they missed the delicious food, they really missed it. They picked up their chopsticks and turned their grief and anger into appetite, and ate 2 big bowls. After everyone finished eating, Adam introduced it slowly. This dish is called Dingo Shangsu, which is indeed a very healthy dish. Most of the ingredients are various fungi, and the vegetarian taste is elegant and fresh. Many of the ingredients in the genuine Dingo Shangsu, mainly fungi, are not available in the UK, so Adam made some adjustments and added some magical plants. These ingredients are mainly from the Forbidden Forest. So if you don't use the name based on the inspiration from Dingo Shangsu, it's not a bad idea to call this dish Black Lake Shangsu. After teasing everyone's hearts with 2 dishes, Adam put away his bad taste and let everyone play on their own, leaving only 2 dishes to the end. This dish is called eggplant with dried fish. Adam pushed the dish that looked like eggplant, mushrooms and nuts and introduced. Nuts and mushrooms are seasonings, the main part is the eggplant, try it. The 5 people started to eat, and a series of exclamations rang out the moment the eggplant entered their mouths. Is this eggplant? Although Uther was also surprised, he was different from others. He ate eggplant at least 4 or 5 times more than the others in the past summer vacation. Well, this Egyptian friend unexpectedly likes to eat garlic eggplant and can eat 2 at a time. So Uther has a certain understanding of the taste of eggplant. He was surprised by the freshness of this bite and was also puzzled that it was different from the taste of eggplant in his impression. Do you think the meat smell is too strong? Eggplant with dried fish and boiled cabbage are both dishes with a hint of meat in the light vegetarian dishes. Senior Newt prefers vegetarian dishes, but he will not refuse meat dishes, so Adam guessed that he might like these 2 dishes. But that was just a guess. Adam himself had no way of fully understanding the tastes of the British, so he could only make judgments based on the reactions of the people in front of him. Uther's reaction didn't seem to have much value to rely on, he was just eating for free. No, it's very delicious. Bernard stretched out his chopsticks for a long time, and finally couldn't help but after picking up the spoon, he put the macadamia nut into his mouth. At the same time, pine nuts, cashews, almonds, and eggplant were also put into his mouth. Bernard narrowed his eyes immediately. This dish should be eaten with a spoon. The aroma of nuts and eggplant mixed together, the hard nuts and soft eggplant intertwined, bursting out the deliciousness of 1 + 1 2 in the mouth. Adam nodded, it seemed to work well, so he pushed the boiled cabbage again. Looking at the lonely cabbage on the plate and the clear soup next to it, the 5 people were puzzled and did not express any opinions. Is this for us to drink some light vegetable soup to relieve the greasiness after eating? Cologne stretched out a spoon and scooped a spoonful of soup to his mouth and blew it. But we didn't eat very greasy this time, except for the fat bomb. Thinking of the fat bomb, Cologne took a sip of soup with a bitter face, and his eyes suddenly widened. What is this, taste? Adam raised his lips slightly. Both are holy soups. In terms of freshness, boiled cabbage may not be as good as Buddha Jumps Over the Wall, which is a soup that brings together dozens of delicacies from the mountains and the sea. However, the shock and contrast brought by the plain boiled cabbage at first sight are definitely much stronger than the Buddha Jumps Over the Wall, which is fragrant before the food arrives. Moreover, the soup of boiled cabbage is very clear. Unlike Buddha Jumps Over the Wall, which has many collagen-rich ingredients, resulting in a slightly sticky taste, boiled cabbage only uses poultry and pork, and has to go through the 2 steps of using minced meat to absorb impurities and skimming off floating oil. Therefore, boiled cabbage will only make people feel fresh and fragrant, and even if you eat a few more bites, you won't feel sick. If Senior Newt is not used to eating eggplant, then boiled cabbage should at least get his praise. Delicious. Even the cabbage heart was eaten up, and the 5 people sat comfortably on the chairs. Hey? Adam, you haven't eaten yet. Looking at Adam who was floating the plate to the sink, Uther remembered that their chef hadn't eaten anything yet. As soon as these words came out, the 5 people who came back to their senses from the aftertaste immediately fell into a burst of self-blame. It's okay, I'll just eat something casually, you can go. Adam brought out a bowl of white rice. No. We must see what you eat before we leave. Looking at the bowl of white rice, Cologne covered his chest with a guilty conscience. Adam will be busy later, so he will definitely just eat a few bites. Adam stood up, walked to the stove, and used a colander and long chopsticks to pick up a big red elbow from the pot and threw it on the chopping board. Watching the big elbow meat bounce on the chopping board, Adam picked up the knife with satisfaction and patted the elbow meat, and then the knife flew, the big elbow was chopped up in an instant, and Adam poured a few spoonfuls of stewed elbow soup on it. Pa! The sound of the plate of pork elbow being placed on the table was heard, and the 5 people's hanging hearts were broken. A bowl of rice, a dish, a bowl of soup, just eat whatever you want. While Adam was speaking, he picked up the kettle of boiling cabbage soup, poured himself a bowl of soup, then put the rice into the pork elbow and mixed it well, and put a spoonful into his mouth. You have to see this for yourself. The 5 people looked at each other silently, and read the same meaning in each other's eyes. I'm so greedy, I want to eat, but I can't eat any more. Chapter 118. As the doors of the hall slowly opened, the much-anticipated Halloween dinner finally arrived. The dinner prepared by Adam has always been the most anticipated by everyone at Hogwarts. Before entering the hall, Professor Dumbledore smiled and introduced the new Professor Lupin and Professor Scamander, and then saw the hall decorated by Adam. Pumpkin lanterns and candles floated above the hall, and occasionally a group of bats would suddenly fly over, casting a shadow on the long table. The 4 long tables were also specially modified. For example, the Hufflepuff table was made into a shape covered with devil's snares. This is... A Hufflepuff looked at a bony hand sticking out of the devil's snare and couldn't help swallowing his saliva. He stretched out his hand and broke off a piece of finger bone and took it to his front to smell. It smells like candy. Wow! This is so cool! Ron tentatively stretched out his hand to the upper body of the armor-less armor in front of him. Can this be eaten? Wow! Wow! The armor-less armor suddenly raised his hand and stretched it towards Ron, and Ron was immediately scared and his hair exploded. Calm down, little Ronnie, this guy just wants to treat you to candy. Yes, you should be a little braver, remember to say thank you to him. A familiar voice came from behind, and Ron could imagine the 2 identical smirks without looking back. He looked closely and saw that the armor's outstretched hand was holding a few candies. The colorful outer packaging was the cheapest kind of fruit candy in Adam's store. It was obvious that it was not Adam's work if it was placed here. Did you do it? Ron turned back angrily and looked at Fred and George. Oh little Ronnie, why do you miss your brother so much? Fred covered his chest and looked at George with a hurt face. That's right, in your eyes, we can only do such low-level pranks. George sighed with a sad face. Isn't it? Hey, if it were the 2 of us, at least it would be like this. The 2 brothers took Ron's hand and stuffed something into his hand, then left in style. Happy Halloween! Ron looked down at the palm of his hand, and a black spider that was still moving moved its 8 legs and was about to climb up along his wrist. Ron waved his arms desperately with a look of collapse, and the spider drew a parabola in the air and flew to the Slytherin table next door. A cough cough cough. What is that? Draco just opened his mouth to take a bite of beef Wellington, but a strange thing flew into his mouth, melting in his mouth and spreading a brown sugar flavor between his lips and tongue. It tastes pretty good. After 3 seconds of silence, Draco looked around and didn't find anyone with a strange expression, so he gave up and continued to enjoy beef Wellington. Seeing the joyful scene of his classmates, Professor Dumbledore smiled and nodded, then looked at the little man in front of him. In the teacher's seat, there was a small statue in front of each professor's seat. Is this fondant? Professor Dumbledore reached out and touched it, and the touch from his fingertips told him that it didn't seem to be fondant, but more like dry and solidified dough. After confirming that the statue was strong enough, Professor Dumbledore brought his little man in front of him for a closer look. Professor Dumbledore, a 5-inch tall Q-version figure, is holding Fawkes and seems to be talking to him. Unlike the completely realistic fondant figure before, his expression is also in the style of the 2nd dimension, which looks childish. Professor Dumbledore glanced at Professor McGonagall next door. Her figure is her holding the sorting hat in her left hand and the parchment roll in her right hand to prepare for the sorting. The cute figure perfectly restores the scene at that time. That's great. Recalling that Lupin came to him because Adam's boggart was a little abnormal, Professor Dumbledore couldn't help shaking his head in his heart. How could such a person who loves life, classmates, and teachers be abnormal? It is precisely because of such children that the conspiracies in the magic world can be thwarted again and again. Before Adam came, Professor Dumbledore's eyes swept over Harry, and then looked at Professor Scamander. Hey? Seeing the little figure in front of Professor Scamander, big, scenery, Professor Dumbledore was silent. The figure of Professor Scamander is similar to other professors. The figure of Professor Scamander is obviously his younger self, wearing a windbreaker and carrying a suitcase. A niffler with a gold necklace around his neck is trying to escape from the box with a hole opened. In addition, there is a bowtruckle sitting on the shoulder of Newt's figure, behind him there is a thunderbird with its wings spread, beside him there is a poisonous horned beast and 3 manticores. Does that line of footprints mean there is an invisible beast in the corner? Yes, Professor Scamander's little man has been madly decorated with scenery under his feet. It was not until the golden plates and bowls filled with various delicacies appeared on the table that Professor Dumbledore sighed and convinced himself to accept this. Even if you love your teacher, there must be a difference in degree of love, just like Professor Sprout, who is also a Hufflepuff, is not also. Thinking of this, Professor Dumbledore suddenly flashed in his mind the fondant cake that Adam made for Professor Sprout last year. Tisk, I suddenly feel that the dishes in front of me are not so fragrant. Here comes the boiled cabbage. The cabbage heart of the boiled cabbage will become soft and fall apart after soaking in the soup for a long time, so it must be eaten on the spot. It is too hard for the house elves to be responsible for 4 colleges, so Adam personally served this dish to the professors, definitely not because he wanted to listen to Professor Scamander's evaluation of the dinner up close. At this time, Adam did not do it too obviously, starting with Professor Dumbledore pouring the broth from the pot into the plate in front of him. When the cabbage heart bloomed like a lotus in the broth, Professor Dumbledore looked at Adam with some resentment. However, Adam did not receive it. After pouring the soup for the professors one by one, he came to Professor Scamander very naturally. Professor Scamander, do you like the dishes tonight? Oh. Of course. Professor Scamander quickly wiped his mouth with a handkerchief and turned his head with a smile. This is the most sumptuous dinner I have ever attended. Oh, right. Professor Scamander turned back and carefully picked up the integrated figurine. I want to ask, is this also edible? How long can it be preserved? Of course you can eat it, as long as you want. If you avoid direct sunlight and put it in a cool and dry place, it can be preserved for at least a dozen years. When Adam was making it, he was aiming to make it into a decoration, so basically the physical properties are changed according to metal, which also leads to the fact that these figurines can only be eaten by ingestion. Of course, for hygiene reasons, if you want to eat it, it's best to eat it within a week. Okay, thank you. Professor Scamander touched the details of the figurine, and obviously had no intention of eating it, and even his eye sockets were slightly red. Adam then remembered that according to the time, the magical animals on this figurine should have died by now, careless. Adam, who didn't consider this, could only add a plate of dessert in front of Professor Scamander, hoping to comfort him. Ahem. Adam, come here. Suddenly, Professor Dumbledore coughed and waved to Adam. Chapter 119. Professor Dumbledore, what's wrong? Looking at Adam, who looked innocent, Professor Dumbledore couldn't help but lower his voice and said, Mr. Reed, I must remind you that it is unethical for a chef to cook special dishes for people at a banquet. The sugar before was fine. He licked Fox, it was just a large maltose, and the big and small pieces didn't matter much. But the dessert after that was too much. Special dishes? Me? Really? Adam recalled that he did make some extra barbecue, but it was a midnight snack and he didn't have time to take it out. Of course. Professor Dumbledore secretly pointed in the direction of Professor Scamander. Look at the table in front of Newt Scamander. Adam took a look and saw that he had one more plate of dessert than the others. The meat and fish are boneless, the dessert figurines are the largest, and even the fruits are peeled and cut into small pieces. Professor Dumbledore was a little excited when he spoke, and lowered his voice a little. That's fine, you also gave him an extra dessert. Ahem. Adam coughed a little guilty, but couldn't help explaining. Isn't Professor Scamander already over 90 years old? Professor Dumbledore looked at the white beard on his chest, could not help but remind Adam. He was also my student back then, and I am much older than him. Adam was speechless for a moment, and finally managed to say. Really? Then you are in good shape, Professor. Professor Dumbledore, at percent you and percent. And isn't Professor Scamander a new professor? He has only taught us for 1 year, so of course we need to take good care of him. What about Professor Lupin? Hearing Professor Dumbledore's faint question, Adam was not guilty at all this time. How old is Professor Scamander, and how old is Professor Lupin? Anyway, Adam then added a portion of dessert to the other professors before returning to the Hufflepuff table. Oh! Adam, you are finally back, we saved it for you. The dishes that everyone saved for him piled up into a small mountain on the plate in front of Adam, and the various containers in front were now basically empty. As the saying goes, a young boy can eat his father out of money, especially when the food is delicious enough. The few dishes left are fish, which is too troublesome to eat. Badgers who are still eager to eat, I want fish but I don't have the ability. Eugene who is eating like crazy, isn't this the importance of learning to pick fish bones? By the way, Adam, didn't you say there was a surprise? What is the surprise? Surprise? Isn't it on your plate? Plate? Ernie looked at the plate in front of him. There was only the bones left. Is it this copper nut? I thought you accidentally put it in. Ernie couldn't help frowning. So, the surprise is a copper nut. Although it is indeed a pleasure to eat money, but this is still a big gap from the surprise they imagined before. No, you will know when you eat halfway. Adam kept it a secret. In the middle of the dinner, Adam stood up and cast a loud spell on himself. Everyone! You may find the copper nut I put in any food at the banquet that can hide a copper nut. There are 10 copper nuts on the long table of each college. The lucky ones who eat it can receive the final prize. After the dinner, the professors left first, and Adam walked to the front and asked everyone to come forward with the copper nuts they had eaten before to receive the prize. Students who have eaten copper nuts, please come forward with your copper nuts. Finally, there were a total of 47 people standing in front of Adam, each holding a copper nut in their hands and claiming that they had eaten it themselves. This copper nut is specially made by me. Please use your brains. How can I use the copper nut that everyone has as a lucky draw tool? Adam eliminated a Gryffindor, 3 Ravenclaws, and 6 Slytherins without hesitation. Bang! The dark staff slammed heavily on the ground, and the glittering spikes on it made the little wizards who wanted to say something swallow their words. Professor McGonagall, Professor Snape, and Professor Flitwick, who were preparing to enter the hall to present prizes, saw this scene and felt embarrassed for a moment, exchanging slightly awkward glances with each other. Are there any other students who want to try to find it? Just a reminder, every piece of food that has been found must be eaten. Adam looked at the 4 long tables, and everyone looked at the things left on the table, and most of them shook their heads. Only a few took another small cake and stuffed it into their mouths with a try-it-out mentality. Obviously, they still didn't find it. Adam underestimated the food he made. If they could still eat it, they wouldn't stop. Then, Adam took out his wand and waved it, and a special copper nut flew from the Slytherin's long table to Adam's hand. Put the copper nut on the table, plus the original 37 copper nuts on the table, a total of 38, and 2 more. Adam looked at the Gryffindor and Slytherin who were missing one person, and was silent for a few seconds. You two, have a good appetite. Although the special copper nut tastes the same as the copper nut, it is edible and should have been digested by now. Then these few places will be considered invalid. Congratulations to the people in front of you for winning the final prize. The applause in the auditorium was not too enthusiastic. After all, it was someone else who won the prize, and everyone couldn't help but be curious about what the so-called prize was. Then, we invite the 4 deans to present prizes to these lucky winners. The few young wizards who were just eliminated felt a chill on their backs. Dean! Dean? The next moment, the side door was pushed open, and the 4 deans who had just left walked into the auditorium again. 3 of them glanced at the team of their own academy with unfriendly eyes. Professor McGonagall walked up to Adam. Adam, please give me some time. I have something to say before the award ceremony. Of course, Professor. Adam moved away from the podium, and Professor McGonagall stepped up and said. Those who were trying to cheat just now deduct 50 points. For everyone. In addition, they will be put in detention. Your respective deans will find you later. After that, Professor McGonagall nodded to Adam. I have finished what I want to say, you continue. Adam returned to the podium, looked at the people who were wilting, and couldn't help but shook his head secretly. Even if the professors did leave, you were caught cheating in front of the whole school. Do you still think that the professors will not come after you? Every lucky person gets a thick stack of redemption coupons, which can be exchanged for corresponding candies from Honeyduke's candy store. It's convenient for you to take the coupons. If you like, you can redeem them directly. They are valid for this school year. Well, I want to redeem them directly, is that okay? Neville happened to be one of the lucky ones in Gryffindor. He blushed and took the stack of coupons and handed them to Adam. I'm afraid I'll lose them if I keep holding them. Of course, it's a little late now, and you probably can't move so many candies. Adam took the coupons and used the elimination card to eliminate them with his hands. Let's do this. At 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, I will hand you the candies at the door of the Gryffindor common room. You can call your friends to help you move them. Okay. Neville nodded decisively. However, Neville didn't know how many candies a stack of coupons could be exchanged for. And Adam also forgot that today would be an extraordinary night, in every sense. When Adam and his friends returned to the dormitory, finished washing up, and couldn't wait to take out the barbecue to have another midnight snack, the door of their dormitory was knocked. Colin opened the door, and outside was Cedric's serious face. We found Sirius Black's trace. The professor asked us to go back to the auditorium. What smells so good? Chapter 120. In the hall, students from 4 colleges gathered together, and the sky above the hall was filled with tangible resentment. Because the Gryffindor common room was invaded by Sirius Black, it was confirmed that the fugitive was now inside Hogwarts, and the professors planned to patrol all night to catch him. At the same time, the castle was no longer safe, and of course the students could not continue to be allowed to disperse. At this time, the floor of the hall was covered with purple sleeping bags, which were conjured by Professor Dumbledore. Everyone had to make do with it here for one night tonight. But this was not the main reason for the gathering of resentment in the hall. The sleep on the soft big bed was destroyed, and having to sleep on the floor of the hall with all the students in the school was certainly infuriating, but the fragrance wafting from the door of the hall was even more mouth-watering. The aroma of grease, cumin, and unknown spices was baked through the cracks in the door, which was vague and made people drool. Especially those who were close to the door could even hear the crackling sound of the burning charcoal outside the door. Adam had no choice but to let the barbecue get interrupted, and there was only so much barbecue in total, and he had never thought of exposing the ability of the double card. So there was no choice. For the mental health of other students, they had to finish eating outside the gate before going in. Professor McGonagall, are you really not going to have a skewer? Adam looked at Professor McGonagall, who was guarding them outside because he was worried about their safety. No need, Adam. Gulp, you guys eat, I'm full enough for dinner. Professor McGonagall leaned against the wall, with his back to Adam and the others, and couldn't help swallowing his saliva when he smelled the smell. Adam's expression was a little subtle. Professor McGonagall, you said you were full, but you turned your back to us. If you turned around, I don't believe you would have nothing in your eyes. Woo woo woo. The person closest to the gate happened to be a Hufflepuff. He vaguely heard the conversation between Adam and the others, and couldn't help but bite the edge of the sleeping bag and tear it twice, and let out the wail of a hungry badger. He really wanted to push the door open and rush out right now. Professor McGonagall is not hungry, but I am. He couldn't eat any more, but when he smelled this smell, his stomach seemed to be cast with a traceless stretching spell, and he felt that he could still eat a little more. Looking at Professor McGonagall's back, Adam sighed in his heart, stretched out his hand and grabbed a skewer of grilled fish and picked it up, took it. Adam turned his head and saw Eugene looking down at the ground, but his 2 hands silently grabbed the opposite end of the skewer, and his fingers holding the skewer were even slightly white. This is the only grilled sorry. Just, even if it's for Professor McGonagall QAQ. Adam let go of his hand speechlessly and changed to a skewer of enoki mushrooms and shiitake mushrooms. Fortunately, although Professor McGonagall is an animagus cat, she is not so keen on eating fish, as long as it is fresh enough. Professor McGonagall, please eat a little. You will be on patrol all night soon, so you will definitely be hungry. Professor McGonagall looked at the skewers that were brought to her mouth and swallowed her saliva. Then, I'll just eat one, thank you. It's already brought to her mouth, it would be a bit rude to refuse, after all, it's a student's heartfelt gift. It smells so good. After eating the barbecue, Adam took out a bag of red bean paste buns and brown sugar buns from his bag before entering the auditorium and handed them to Professor McGonagall, asking her to share some with the professors on patrol as a midnight snack. Professor McGonagall waved the 3 remaining squid tentacles in her hand to reassure him, she would definitely help bring them. Bake the ingredients on the wood. It smells so good. Who researched it? Professor McGonagall sighed as she walked away. I didn't expect the giant squid to be so chewy. And it's so big, the squid can't be baked in one oven, so it's eaten in 3 meals, garlic, cumin. Try spicy next time. After rinsing his mouth with a bubble card and removing the foam with a wiper card, Adam got into his sleeping bag. "You ate the giant squid in the Black Lake." A familiar exclamation came from the sleeping bag in front of Adam. Adam looked up and found that it was an acquaintance. "Ah, it's Luna. Long time no see. If tomorrow is a good day, you can still see it basking in the sun by the water if you take a walk by the Black Lake tomorrow, so don't worry. The giant squid in the Black Lake has been domesticated and gets along well with the little wizards of Hogwarts. If someone falls into the water, it will help put the person back on shore." Luna nodded, but her brows were still furrowed. Adam's answer was a bit strange, as if he didn't give a specific answer to whether he ate the giant squid in the Black Lake. Meow. Just then, a cat's cry attracted Luna's attention. "Ah, it's Adam's two kittens." Luna forgot about the giant squid for a moment, stretched out her hand from the sleeping bag and waved to the kittens. The black kitten named Sibby, who was nicknamed Woon Treading Snow, glanced at her as usual and ignored her, but ran away on his own. However, the golden kitten named Zyok, who was nicknamed Jinbei Yinchuang, was very considerate and ran to her side with his tail erect and sat down. "Zyok, have you eaten well recently?" Luna smiled and put Zyok into the sleeping bag, and began to mutter about recent events. She didn't have many friends in Hogwarts, and Adam was one of them, but it was obvious that Adam didn't have time to play with her often. Zyok, a very smart cat, was her closest existence. Nestled in Luna's arms, Zyok moved his ears and made a meow in response from time to time, extracting some useful information from Luna's imaginative description. For example, the situation of the harassment horseflies she mentioned reflects the emotional changes of everyone in the school to a large extent. Also doing similar intelligence-gathering work is Sibby. He walked to the side of Amon's sleeping bag with his head held high and stretched out his claws to scratch the opening of the sleeping bag. Whose good person doesn't even show his head when sleeping in a sleeping bag? "Hey? You're here." The opening of the sleeping bag moved, and suddenly a hand stretched out to pick up Sibby and then shrank back. "Meow. Hee little thing, don't think I don't know what Adam wants to do by sending you here." Amon narrowed his eyes and looked unfathomable. Sibby rolled his eyes and stretched out his claws to press on Amon's forehead. "Then move your face away from my stomach, bastard." "Oh, what's wrong with letting me take a few puffs? I didn't say I disagree. If something important is going to happen, I will remind Adam." Amon couldn't help but take a few more puffs. "Ah, cats that don't have any odor, their fur is always smooth, and they don't shed hair are simply the treasure of the world." Sibby rolled his eyes again. "That's because Adam bathes them with bubble cards every day, and even washes them after they finish eating. Otherwise, even the sealed beasts will get dirty. But it's true that they don't shed hair. By the way, don't you really consider following me?" Amon looked heartbroken. He really likes cats, but cat hair allergy is really a pain in his life. "I swear I will treat you well. Not mentioning the contract of the Book of Seals, there are no bubble cards or GAN cards, and the cooking skills are not good. What can you use to treat me well? With sincerity? You just covet my body." Sibby rolled his eyes again, raised his hind legs and kicked Amon's face, got out of the sleeping bag, and walked away. "If you don't give me the information, the cat petting experience time will end here. If you want to continue, please renew it with information, dear." Chapter 121. Although the professors searched the prison for a whole night, they still couldn't find any trace of Sirius Black. Of course, just like Professor Lupin, Professor Dumbledore also had doubts about what happened back then. Sirius's sudden escape from prison now showed that there was something else behind this incident. Otherwise, since Sirius had the ability to escape from prison, why did he wait so many years to do so? Back in the principal's office, Professor Dumbledore picked up a newspaper on the table. He got the news from the Ministry of Magic that after Sirius escaped from prison, the only thing that was left in the cell was this issue of the Daily Prophet. The front page of the newspaper was a photo of the Weasley family traveling to Egypt because they won the lottery. Judging from the traces of flipping through the newspaper in the cell, Sirius only read the front page before escaping from prison. Professor Dumbledore's eyes swept through every detail of the photo, and finally slowly stopped at the mouse on Ron's shoulder. As a thought flashed through his mind, he seemed to have found a way for Sirius to escape from the cage. Animagus. No matter what Sirius is like now, at least Adam's classmates don't have the mind to think about those things now. It was another magical creature protection class. Professor Scamander didn't bring any magical creatures. Professor Scamander had shown everyone his magical suitcase before. Almost any magical creature from all over the world can be found in his suitcase, but now Professor Scamander didn't bring his suitcase, which means that the magical creatures involved in this class are very dangerous, and the first lesson about such magical creatures. Well, yes, I believe everyone is ready. Professor Scamander saw that everyone looked like they were facing a great enemy, and couldn't help laughing. Newt Scamander has been active in the wizarding world for so long that many people don't know that he actually has a bit of a bad taste. Today we are going to start learning about a new magical animal, the Erumpent. Professor Scamander raised his index finger and looked around. Who can explain the information about the Erumpent? After teaching for half a semester, Professor Scamander has gradually gotten into the classroom. The people sitting below are either badgers who admire Professor Scamander or Ravenclaws who love knowledge. When this question comes out, the whole class raises their hands. Other colleges will be silent when they see it, and other professors will cry when they see it. Well, then, Eugene will answer. Professor Scamander glanced around and chose the most outstanding one. Eugene stood up, took a deep breath with some excitement, and then began to read the introduction of the Erumpent and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Erumpent is a large beast living in Africa. It has a grey body, is very similar to a rhinoceros, and can weigh up to 1 ton. Very good, I remember it very clearly. Does anyone else want to add anything? Professor Scamander looked around and finally looked at Adam beside him. Adam. Erumpents are prone to casualties during the estrus period. Male erumpents often blow each other up to compete for mates at this time. Adam added, then he thought for a moment. Their explosive liquid tastes good after cooking. I used it to stuff sausages before. It tastes a bit like blood sausage and tastes surprisingly good. Oh. Professor Scamander didn't know the latter point either, so he nodded. Maybe I can try it next time. Although he likes magical animals, he is not such an unrealistic person. In addition to magical animal research, he has been more committed to banning poaching and protecting the habitats of magical animals over the years. He can only say that he doesn't like but accepts raising and eating magical animals. You can look forward to the Christmas dinner. Nodding, Professor Scamander looked at everyone and smiled. Now everyone should have a general understanding of the venomous horns. Next, I will introduce the habits of the venomous horns in detail, and how we can protect ourselves when we encounter them in the wild. The courtship dance of the venomous horns is a bit complicated, so after Professor Scamander introduced the habits of the venomous horns, he only had time to break down the movements for everyone before the class ended. The specific learning will start from the next class. After Professor Scamander left, the little wizards immediately wailed. Cologne couldn't help but cover his face and bang his head against the tree. That dance? Do we really have to dance? Turning his back to the venomous horns, sticking up his butt and twisting, and then enrolling on the ground. After just watching Professor Scamander demonstrate it once, he was so embarrassed that he wanted to dig his toes into the ground. Cologne, this is all Professor Scamander's experience. Senior Newt relied on this courtship dance to catch the female poison-horned beast in heat. Adam patted Cologne's shoulder soothingly. And Professor Scamander is old and still goes into battle personally. You can't let his efforts go to waste, right? You're invincible. Cologne said subconsciously after hearing this sarcastic remark. After saying it, he turned around and collapsed. When you say this, at least put away the smile on your face. Ah? Did I smile? Adam reached out and touched the corner of his upturned mouth. Oh, this. I was born with smiling lips. Puff. Ah, Adam, you're too much. Looking at the laughing Adam and Cologne, thinking of the dance that made people's eyes black, Uther couldn't help pinching his eyebrows. Or, he should go to the Weasley twins to buy some quick-acting skipping candy? He didn't want to dance that dance either. Although there were not many young wizards who wanted to use the quick-acting skipping candy, there were some, especially Ravenclaw. Most of the Hufflepuff Badgers thought that this was Professor Scamander's class, so they could still bear it, but the Ravenclaw Eagles had no such concerns. As for the young wizards who had such thoughts, Adam smiled slightly. Did you know that he also participated in the development of the quick-acting skipping candy? He even bought a camera. Want to run? No way. Not to mention the windows, the skylights were welded shut. From white fresh essence to various potions, and even the antidote for all kinds of quick-acting skipping candy, he had already prepared it. Don't even think about running away. All of you come to class. Before everyone had to worry too much about the next lesson of the Protection of Magical Creatures class, where they would learn the courtship dance of the venomous horned beast, this year's Quidditch competition kicked off on the weekend. On the day of the game, it started to rain heavily early in the morning. The dull thunder echoed in the heavy clouds. The strong wind carried raindrops, which even made people feel pain when hitting their faces. However, even in this kind of weather, the Quidditch game will not be cancelled because of this, let alone heavy rain. Even if it hail and the hail killed people, at most they would just change players. Cancellation of the game? Not happening. Is this the sportsmanship of wizards? They really, I'm crying. Bernard's vague voice came from under the scarf. Why do you wear your scarf so well? Adam looked at him strangely. Is my umbrella not wide enough? Bernard, who was hiding under Adam's umbrella, pulled down his scarf and smiled. Doesn't this make it more atmospheric? Everyone looked at him speechlessly. You are so dramatic. Because the rain was too heavy, Adam stretched out his wand and held up an invisible umbrella, blocking the wind and rain outside the range of the 5 people. He could actually stop the rain, but considering that the 2 teams in this game were Gryffindor and Slytherin, there was no need for the rain to stop. Chapter 122. Gryffindor may suffer in this match. Cedric spoke solemnly at the guardrail, and then took a mouthful of wind and rain. What? Adam didn't hear clearly. I say. Can't you be kind? Wrap me under your umbrella too. Cedric put his hand to his mouth and shouted in Adam's direction. It's only 1 step away. You guys are living a peaceful life over there, but I'm getting cold icy rain hitting my face. Is this appropriate? Adam looked up at the invisible umbrella that stretched out from his wand. It would be so ugly if it expanded further. After thinking about it, Adam waved his wand in a pretentious manner, and a banana tree rose from the ground, with its specially enlarged leaves stacked up to block them as an umbrella. Then Adam raised his hand and broke off a banana, peeled it and stuffed it into Cedric's mouth. It's not raining now, go on. Ahoy! Cedric bit off the banana in his mouth, and the spreading sweetness made his eyes light up. He chewed a few bites and swallowed the banana, then repeated what he had just said. The Gryffindor side is not optimistic in this game. By the way, what kind of spell is this? You can actually grow bananas out of thin air, it's amazing. It's just a summoning spell similar to orchid blooming. Adam made a random remark. You just said that Gryffindor is not optimistic. Why? Don't you remember that Slytherin was deducted a full 300 points at the Halloween dinner before? Cedric shrugged. This time they will definitely miss the House Cup, and they will be more eager for the Quidditch Cup. They will definitely do whatever it takes. After that, Cedric stuffed the remaining half of the banana into his mouth at once. Adam looked at Cedric, who ate half a banana effortlessly, and could not help but remain silent. Although the banana he grew was not as big as a banana, it was almost 2/3 the length of his forearm. Well, Gryffindor and Slytherin had strong men who could swallow a copper nut whole. It seems that my great Hufflepuff is not much behind. While thinking this, Adam raised his hand and broke off another banana. He looked at the banana and then at Cedric, who swallowed the banana in his mouth. That. Why don't you try to challenge it, 1 banana at a time? I'll try. Just when Adam and Cedric were studying the limits of the human body, with Madame Hooch's whistle, both parties took off together. Look, Adam. Pushed on the back by Cologne, Adam looked at the field distractedly. What he saw was a misty rain curtain, and only a little red and green shadows could be seen. What's the point of this? Might as well watch Cedric's performance. Hiss. Seeing Cedric swallow the whole banana in 1 gulp, closing his mouth with difficulty, and then giving him a thumbs up, Adam couldn't help but gasp and applaud him at the same time. That's amazing. By the way, I heard there's a legend in the Muggle world that if you swallow a light bulb, you can't take it out. Do you want to try this again? As he said that, Adam took out a light bulb from somewhere. Cedric. It's okay, take a deep breath, don't be anxious, don't bite the glass, it's normal that you can't open your mouth. After the test of the banana, Cedric looked at the light bulb and stuffed it into his mouth with great disdain, and then, as expected, he couldn't take it out. Adam calmed him down and moved his fingers again. The light bulb in Cedric's mouth shrank silently and was easily taken out by Adam. Hiss. I won't try this kind of trick in life again next time. Cedric rubbed his cheeks that were sore from being stretched. Ah! Suddenly, A wailing sound came from the field, and Adam couldn't help but turn his head. What's that noise? It seems that Malfoy fell off the broom. There was some uncertainty in Cologne's voice, and he couldn't see clearly in such a heavy rain. It's him. Eugene saw the flash of platinum. Generally speaking, a seeker needs to be small in size so that they can fly faster and more flexibly, making it easier to catch the golden snitch. Cedric explained. But in weather like this, Malfoy and Potter's size is actually a disadvantage. Their size can't withstand the fierce wind and rain at high altitudes, and they will fall from high altitudes if they are not careful. Adam couldn't help but look at him, his eyes lingering on his bulging muscles that propped up his robes for a moment. So at this time, our Hufflepuff seekers have an advantage. That's right. Cedric nodded. Body size and the like can only affect temporary advantages and disadvantages. What really determines victory or defeat is the skills of Quidditch players. Eugene and Colin both nodded in agreement. Adam also nodded and glanced at the field below. I hope everyone is okay. Unfortunately, everyone is really okay. Perhaps it was because of the heavy rain, the muddy ground played a buffering effect, or perhaps it was a professor who took action. In short, Draco only broke his nose, arm, and 3 ribs, and he just needed to lie in the hospital wing for a while. The Slytherin team had to replace the new seeker, a boy with a relatively burly figure. Obviously, the Slytherin team found the reason for Draco's fall. But this also means that if Harry can still stay on the flying broom without being knocked down by the wind and rain, then Harry will have a significant advantage in speed over the Slytherin seeker. After exchanging some ideas while changing players, the Slytherin beaters silently stared at Harry. In the next few minutes, Madame Hooch's whistle continued to sound on the field, and her anger level was constantly rising from the short whistles. What's the situation? Did the Gryffindor team score? Where is the golden snitch? Similar questions came one after another, and everyone was struggling to look in the rain, but the rain was getting heavier and the sky was getting darker, and they couldn't even see the scoreboard clearly. The temperature was also starting to drop, to a level that made Eugene couldn't help but get goosebumps. It's the Dementors. Eugene's face was a little pale, and he couldn't help but move towards Adam. The shield could resist the influence of the Dementors, but it couldn't stop Eugene from falling into negative emotions when he recalled the situation that day. Because this emotion came from the heart, not from the outside world, just like the shield couldn't resist the loneliness caused by being locked in a small dark room. Adam glanced at Uther again. The boy was looking into the distance. His face showed no signs of what was going on, but his hand holding the railing was already bulging with veins. It was so funny. I've read your childhood diary. Why are you pretending now? Adam pulled them to his side and stuffed a piece of hazelnut chocolate into each of their hands. Calm down as soon as possible. I'll give you 2 more carts of chocolate products later. Eugene took a bite of the chocolate. The sweetness and calories calmed his mood and warmed his heart. 2 carts are too much. We can't finish them. Who said it was for you to eat? Adam looked at him in surprise. The Dementors have invaded. The students must be scared. You should adjust your state first. The chocolate will definitely sell out later. Chapter 123. The sky was getting darker and darker. Accompanied by the familiar cold that seemed to penetrate into the heart, everyone couldn't help but recall the experience at the beginning of the school year. The rain had stopped at some point, but the coldness around was even more biting. Everyone could see the things that were gathering and rolling towards them in the dark clouds. It's the Dementors. Accompanied by a cry of surprise, the stands exploded. The happiness of all the teachers and students in the school because of Quidditch was so tempting in the eyes of the Dementors, and unlike the previous banquet when everyone was in the castle, now everyone was in the open-air Quidditch field. From a human perspective, it was like the scallops opened their shells by themselves, revealing the delicious and tender meat to tempt them to eat. Who could bear this? So the Dementors came. Not to mention that they were not employees of the Ministry of Magic, and at most had a cooperative relationship with the Ministry of Magic. Even considering the Ministry of Magic, they had only received an order not to enter the castle before. Didn't they not enter the castle? Although they seemed to think that doing so was logically self-consistent, some people were obviously not willing to listen to their thoughts. With the arrival of the Dementors, Eugene and Uther were not the only ones who were deeply affected, but also Harry, who was in the air at this time. Harry fell directly from mid-air, and the Nimbus 2000 purchased by Professor McGonagall lost control on the spot and rushed towards the Forbidden Forest crookedly. Shock absorption and speed stop. At this critical moment, Professor Dumbledore stood up and urgently cast a wandless spell on Harry, and Harry's falling momentum slowed down. Seeing this scene, Professor Dumbledore looked up at the Dementors in the air, his eyes full of anger that everyone had never seen in the eyes of this respected wizard in all these years. Oh! Although Adam couldn't see clearly, he did not miss the magic that was like a volcano about to erupt. It seems that a certain Minister of Magic will be very busy in the next period of time. Expecto Patronus. Professor Dumbledore's voice called Adam's attention back. Magic power and surging emotions mixed together. The silver-white substance was like a surging wave sweeping towards the sky. Dozens of Dementors were crushed and torn apart the moment they were hit by the wave. Non-existence has no concept of death. They appear because of emotions and disappear because of emotions. Even if they are torn apart, they will only condense again in sadness and emptiness. But the instinctive rejection of positive emotions still makes Dementors stay away from the Quidditch field. Oh my god! Almost everyone has never seen the Patronus charm, and even those who have seen it have never seen a Patronus charm of this scale. Looking at the sky that suddenly became clear, all the little wizards were shocked. It was also at this time that the Slytherin team took the opportunity to catch the golden snitch and won the championship of this game. However, when everyone returned to the ground, when they looked at their dean happily, they found that Professor Snape followed Professor Dumbledore, not paying any attention to their victory, but staring at Harry lying on the ground, his face livid. Rolanda, continue to do what you should do. I will take Harry to the school infirmary first. Professor Dumbledore said to Madame Hooch in a gentle voice, waved his wand, and a stretcher appeared on the grass under Harry to lift Harry up. Professor Dumbledore walked directly to the castle with the stretcher. After Professor Dumbledore left, Madame Hooch continued to preside over the previous game and judged that the Slytherin team won. After the game, everyone dispersed, and only one person stood in the center of the field to welcome the rain clouds that slowly gathered again in the sky. That's the captain of the Gryffindor team, Oliver Wood. Cedric looked back at him and couldn't help but feel pity. If I remember correctly, from the time he entered Gryffindor until now, Gryffindor has never beaten Slytherin in the Quidditch Cup, not even once. He will graduate after this year, right? So you plan to let the Gryffindor team win in the game? Adam turned his head and looked at him. It is true that Slytherin won the Gryffindor team in this game, but it is not a good thing for both colleges. The game environment was too bad and it ended too quickly. Neither team accumulated many points. The final ranking of the Quidditch Cup is not based on the number of wins of each team, but the total points each team has achieved this season. That's why it is said that there are too many loopholes in the rules of Quidditch. In a Quidditch game like Hogwarts with only 4 teams, once a team decides to feed points to another team, and the strength of this team is not too bad, if the Hufflepuffs can't win the championship this year, then they can definitely feed the other team to become the champion. How is that possible? Cedric looked up. This year is the year when our Hufflepuffs are most likely to win the championship. With Adam's food incentive buff, if the Hufflepuffs can't win the championship this year, then there won't be much hope in the next few years. Well, I look forward to the final results. Adam smiled and nodded, then looked at Uther and Eugene. Let's go, set up a stall in the North Tower. The intrusion of the Dementors cast a shadow on this year's Quidditch game. In response, Adam specially launched a comforting package, which is sweet to the heart, and is also discounted regularly. Even the little wizards who are not scared can't help but buy, and some even buy for their families. The package was already discounted, and now it's discounted even more? Isn't Adam losing a lot? I want to buy 10 sets. Looking at Seamus, who was about to pay, Harry hesitated. But, this is specially prepared by Adam for people who are frightened by Dementors. Isn't it bad for us to take advantage of this? Actually, I was also frightened by Dementors, but it's just that you can't tell from the outside. Seamus's behavior of lying with his eyes open attracted Harry's disapproving eyes. The twins stood behind everyone without knowing when, and their expressions were a little complicated after hearing Harry's words. Yes, Adam is losing a lot. If everyone in Hogwarts buys one more set, Adam will go bankrupt. If the loss in the first Quidditch game made the Gryffindors feel a little depressed, then the defense against the dark arts class that followed caught them off guard. Your defense against the dark arts professor is ill, so I will substitute for you in this class. Professor Snape stood behind the podium with a gloomy smile. Adam felt that Professor Snape's current mood should have little to do with the green plum essence wolf poison potion he had brewed before. The main reason is that Professor Snape is naturally fond of laughing. What does it have to do with him, an ordinary badger passing by? Adam thought so after being specially glanced at by Professor Snape. Your original progress is really too slow. After explaining why he came to class, Professor Snape madly dissed a certain defense against the dark arts professor for his incompetence, and then gave everyone a defense against the dark arts class that was a little ahead of everyone's current progress. The main content was how to identify werewolves hidden in the crowd and how to deal with werewolves. Next class, I want to see each of your papers. After assigning homework, Professor Snape floated away, leaving behind a wailing. There is no way. Not only was Professor Lupin humorous in class before, but he also hardly gave homework. This time. A 3-foot-long paper. Does Professor Snape have a grudge against werewolves? Even Eugene couldn't help but complain when he was packing up his books and notes. He needs to participate in Quidditch training this year, plus 2 elective classes and help Adam run the store, so he doesn't have as much spare time as last year. Hearing this, Adam couldn't help but look at him. He hadn't heard Eugene's divine prophecy for a long time, and he missed it a little. Adam could only squint his eyes and agree. Who knows? Chapter 124. So many things happened in just a few days. The Dementor breaking into the Quidditch field attracted most of everyone's attention, and Professor Snape's paper occupied everyone's weekend time. So when we saw Professor Scamander again, we didn't remember the content of this class for a while. It's okay. I understand that you may not be in such a good state during this period. Professor Scamander smiled sympathetically, and then said. So we only need to learn a set of movements in the first half of this class, and then we can pass them one by one with Adam and me in the second half of the class. The homework for this class is to master these movements well. The so-called set of movements is probably squatting, dancing, back lifting the robe, twisting the buttocks, rolling this set of movements. The complete courtship dance is just repeating this process, accompanied by leg movements that imitate the steps of the poisonous horned beast, imitating the complete courtship movements. The little wizards suddenly wailed, but some of them brightened their eyes and looked at Adam. Why do classmates embarrass classmates? Adam should be more relaxed. After the first half of the class, when it was time for the second half of the class, everyone was divided into 2 groups according to Adam and Professor Scamander as the examiners. When the little wizards who chose Adam as the examiner saw the machine Adam took out, their faces turned green. Especially Bernard. Others didn't know it. How could he not know it? It was clearly a video recorder, and the dark history it captured was much darker than a simple camera. To be honest, can this thing really work properly in the wizarding world? Bernard advised kindly. Adam. Turn it off. I remember that sophisticated electronic equipment will malfunction in the wizarding world. What if it explodes later? Don't worry, my magic can protect it. Even if you use it to shoot a basilisk, there will be no problem. Adam laughed quite wantonly. Come on, everyone. I will record your dancing postures so that I can help you better find the shortcomings in your movements. You know, if you encounter an ermine, it's no joke if you dance wrong. Professor Scamander nodded in agreement. Little wizards. Is it too late for them to switch to Professor Scamander as the examiner now? It's a pity, it's too late. I regret it. Bernard slapped his thigh desperately and was pushed to take the test first. I should have chosen Professor Scamander like Eugene and Colin. I shouldn't have believed Adam's reliability in such a matter that would not harm his life but would make people embarrassed. Then you are probably overthinking it. Look at the end of the team. Adam, who had just returned after leaving for a while, pointed behind Bernard. Bernard turned his head and saw Eugene and Colin at the back of the team with bitter faces. In addition, there are many young wizards who were originally with Professor Scamander. I think Professor Scamander is still under a lot of pressure. I am afraid that the professor is not energetic enough, so I asked them to come from Professor Scamander. Adam smiled very considerately and was very considerate of the professor. Cologne and Eugene, Serge, I love you. Although it's so funny now, after the test started, everyone felt that it wasn't that awkward looking at Adam with a serious face behind the video recorder. After everyone finished dancing, Adam would replay the video, point out every place where everyone made mistakes, and then let everyone practice on their own. Although the little wizards were shocked and tapped their toes when watching the video, fortunately, only Adam and I could see the video, and it must be said that this method is indeed more efficient than Professor Scamander's way of calling a halt when everyone made a mistake, and then going up to give hand-in-hand guidance. But for many badgers, the hand-in-hand teaching there seems to be more attractive. In response, Adam just quietly turned the screen playing the video towards the crowd who were secretly looking at it, and the badgers immediately calmed down. Put down the black history in your hands, and everyone can talk. Finally, Adam's team was finished, but Professor Scamander's team was not finished yet. Professor Scamander waved his hand and threw the rest of the team to Adam for assessment. After class, Professor Scamander hammered his sore waist and looked at the video recorder in Adam's hand curiously. Adam, your method is really more efficient. I think other classes can use it too. The little wizards who had not yet dispersed looked at each other and nodded quickly. Yes, yes. Scamander, Professor Scamander, you are really too tired. We can't be the only ones to leave the video. Oh, it seems that someone accidentally said something in his heart. Fortunately, he was interrupted in advance, and Professor Scamander didn't seem to hear it. No problem, Professor Scamander, the protective magic I cast can last for a long time, I will teach you how to use it. I don't know if it's an illusion. The little wizards looked at the old and the young who were gathered together in front of them and laughed from time to time. A word inexplicably popped up in their minds in cahoots. Although it's not that 4-character idiom, but it is a slang that roughly means the same thing. Unfortunately, the matter is done. Even if they realize that they seem to have fallen into the trap of the villain, the people who have been recorded in the video can only drag more people into the water. As the saying goes, if a friend dies, I will not die, but if I die, my friend must die. They couldn't help but look at each other and look at those students who had been assessed by Professor Scamander and did not leave video records. We have to think of a way to make them record a video in the next class. Adam, why don't you say something? I'm scared. After returning to the dormitory, Cologne looked at Adam, who had been silent all the way, with some uneasiness. The other three nodded repeatedly. Even if he took out their videos and teased them, well, it should be said that he teased them, even if they had to experience social death, it would only be a matter of a while. Instead of hanging them like now, making them feel uneasy, not knowing when social death would come. Hey? Am I such a person in your hearts? Adam looked at them, a little shocked. Aren't you such a person? Everyone was more shocked than him. Remember when you found out that we were afraid of cockroaches, you developed 99% realistic cockroach candy overnight. Cologne counted them on his fingers. That thing is half the size of my palm, and it can even fly. Bernard couldn't help but add. Hehe, I saw that you had only seen German cockroaches, so I helped you broaden your horizons. Remember that cockroach candy fell from the ceiling and landed directly on the table in front of Eugene, and he almost smashed the table. Uther also said. Hey! Adam frowned. There is such a thing? Impossible. I clearly remember that I didn't do such a thing. Eugene. 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 Seeing that Eugene was about to faint, Cologne quickly changed the subject. What about you scaring me in the middle of the night after showing a horror movie? Cologne was so angry that he trembled all over when he thought of this incident. Well, he must be angry. It can only be said that he went to the toilet to pee cleanly before seeing that scene that time. If he saw that scene before going to the toilet, he probably wouldn't have to go. After the horror movie. Oh, that time, I was simply awakened by the noise of you going to the toilet, and opened my eyes to take a look. It was an accident, an accident. Speaking of this, Adam remembered. When can we watch a movie together again? No. Bernard and Uther showed some interest. Adam smiled innocently. Hey, movies are not just horror movies. This time I'll show you something healthy, sunny, and positive. Chapter 125. Healthy, sunny, positive, etc., whether you believe it or not, Adam believes it anyway. As for what is put in, he uses stories written for you to put stories because of you, which is also reasonable, right? Eat some Happy Land crushed ice first, then go to eat Teacher Jitsy's chocolate door, and then see how they are doing. If they can still hold on, Adam has Titanic, Hachiko, to the moon. Whatever you want to watch, Adam has it, the main one is secondary and third-dimensional pixel style. Love, friendship, teacher-student relationship. Every sort is fatal. While the roommates are howling to feel the healthy, sunny, positive, and beautiful stories, Adam happened to meet a big black dog chasing mice everywhere in the castle. With Adam's finger hook, Peter Pettigrew, who was running for his life, felt a sense of weightlessness. He pinched a hollow candy ball, threw Pettigrew in it, and then sealed the mouth, leaving only the breathing hole. Adam smiled at the little mouse inside the transparent candy. Pettigrew knew Adam. He had eaten a lot of delicious food with Ron and knew that this was a Hufflepuff who loved magical animals. Looking at his smile, he would not sit idly by and watch him being eaten by Sirius in his animagus form, so he finally breathed a sigh of relief and smiled as if he had escaped a disaster. As for whether Sirius would risk being captured by the Dementors and turn back to his original form to tell Adam the truth, Adam would have to believe the wanted criminal. However, before Pettigrew could be happy for too long, he suddenly felt a shock under his feet. When he turned around, he found that there was a neighbor next door. The shrunken Sirius was actually put into the candy ball and stuck next to him. It was Sirius next door who was staring at him viciously and stretched out his claws to hit the candy ball. "Oh, look what I found! A wild big black rat and a big black dog. This is not the place to talk." Adam walked towards the room of requirement, and at the same time, he coiled up 2 sugar balls as iron balls. The dog and the rat suddenly felt dizzy. Sirius had longer legs and could support himself for a while Pettigrew rolled around in the ball. After finally stopping, both animals retched and almost vomited yellow water all over themselves. Let me think about it, how to cook it. Sirius, Pettigrew, XM. Were they too dizzy just now and had auditory hallucinations? Why did I hear? As for mice, it seems that there are many dishes that can be made into them. If you insist, it's okay to make them into lamb skewers, but seriously, how about making them into sans here? Adam muttered to himself and introduced the origin of the name sans here. Wash the mouse, remove the hair, and put it on a plate. When it is first picked up by chopsticks, it will make a sound, when it is dipped into the sauce, it will make a sound again, and when it is bitten, it will make a sound again. As he said this, Adam glanced at Pettigrew and showed disgust. It's a pity that sans here is best made with mice that have just been born and haven't opened their eyes. Forget it, this mouse is too dirty, let's feed it to the basilisk. Petty's hair stood up and his eyes were empty. Is this guy really a Hufflepuff? So Hufflepuff's love for animals means that they like to bring them to the table? And what the hell is feeding it to the basilisk? Compared to that, dogs are much better than mice. If you roll dog meat 3 times, even gods can't stand on it. It's a little thin, but it looks like a wild dog, so you can eat it without worry. You need to remove the smell first, pluck the hair, and then pick the balls. Sirius's hair trembled, and his tail was suddenly clamped between his legs. He looked at Adam with horror. When he saw Adam took out a long-handled weapon full of spikes, Sirius hurriedly didn't care about hiding his identity and changed back to his original form, but he was still in a shrunken state and was trapped in the sugar ball. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hey. Adam turned his eyes to the sugar ball, with a surprised look on his face. A dog that can turn into a human? I've never eaten this before. Sirius almost choked, but the good news was that the other party didn't seem to recognize him, and he quickly raised his hand. I'm not a dog. I'm a human. I'm a wizard. Adam squinted at him for a while, and suddenly said. You said you are a wizard, so where is your wand? Sirius touched his ragged clothes and fell silent. Good question, he is a prisoner who escaped from Azkaban, and his original wand was detained by the Ministry of Magic. Where can he find a wand now? So, how can you prove that you are a wizard who turned into a dog, not a dog who turned into a wizard? Can a dog turn into a wizard? If wizards can turn into dogs, why can dogs turn into dogs? Why can't I become a wizard? Wizard, dog, I am a dog who turned into a wizard? No, I am a wizard who turned into a dog. Sirius felt a confusion in his brain, shook his head, and directly put aside the previous topic. Do you know animagus? Adam narrowed his eyes, not very satisfied with the effect of the psychedelic magic he had researched. The combination of magic cards and sound cards can indeed make the sound have a psychedelic effect, but the effect is far from what he imagined. Even if he used language to interfere with the other party's thinking first, he still couldn't control Sirius, who was in a very bad state. Perhaps we should give up the magic cards, add substitute cards, and try to directly change the other party's concept of wizards and dogs? But in that case, do we still need to keep the sound cards as a medium? Thinking, Adam habitually rolled up the sugar ball in his hand. Hey wait! Squeak! I don't. Ugh! Adam, whose magic power has been slowly increasing, has finally mastered most of the magic on the Clow cards through unremitting training in the 3rd grade. Because the learning progress of the remaining Clow cards is too slow, Adam chose the latter between continuing to study the claw cards that he has not learned and studying new tricks of the magic he has learned. Anyway, he was free, so Adam started to arrange and combine the claw cards magic he had learned. It was also in this process that Adam accidentally discovered many wonderful ways of playing that he had not noticed before. For example, in the increase of the power card under the frame, the wave card can be used as the tremor fruit, the floating card can be used to increase gravity or flexibly control it as telekinesis. But those are not important. The most important thing is the true art of controlling the divine sword and thunder that Adam accidentally developed. Actually, he has been thinking about it for a long time. First, take out a yellow talisman, control it to float in the air with the floating card, then casually use the double card to copy a row, burn it with the fire card, then use the sword card to change the wooden sword to point to the sky, recite the formula, and finally use the thunder card to attack. Although the participation rate of other magic except the thunder card is 100%, the output rate is 0, and the main function of the whole process is to delay time. Effect, but this set looks really cool. And if you feel it's too slow in the real battle, you can actually use the sword finger directly, as long as you remember the formula. In addition, there are sword cards and double cards and floating cards and force cards, Wanjiangazong, frost cards and fog cards and snow cards, frost nova, storm cards and elimination cards, Datuang Feng. Adam originally wanted to use the wind card and the cardless card to make a combination, but unfortunately he couldn't do it. He didn't fully learn the magic of these two cards, and his own magic couldn't withstand this. But he believed that one day he would succeed. Don't underestimate the bond between me and the immortal venerable. Adam raised his hand and clenched his fist, and at the same time finally stopped the action of dribbling the ball in his hand.